Chapter 358, Everything Was a Lie. Zhi Xuan was currently engaged in a fierce battle with the three old men. Ling Han was extremely shocked. Zhi Xuan really deserved the name of a peerless genius. Though she was one person against three, she actually had the upper hand. This would really make one grab their head and exclaim in utter shock. Someone in the Shattering Void tier was actually capable of having the upper hand in a clash against three gods? But that was indeed the reality. Who asked this to be the mortal world, which would suppress the cultivation of gods? And if they were battling on the same level, the ability of a peerless genius to battle one stronger than herself could be displayed to the fullest. However, gods were still gods after all. Even if their abilities were suppressed, they still had a bottomless pool of power at their fingertips. As long as they could drag out the battle long enough, then Zhi Xuan would definitely be exhausted, and thus captured. And the three old men did indeed do so. They merely continued to force Zhi Xuan to endlessly expend her energy, neither too fast nor too slow. Zhi Xuan shouted repeatedly, and scoffed. The thunder battle armor on her body released a white light that transformed into multiple dragons made of thunder that pounced in attack towards those three old men. This was obviously a powerful move, and instantly made those three old men flustered. They only managed to destroy these thunder dragons after much effort. Zhi Xuan took advantage of the opening and escaped the battle, though they caught up to her soon after and another fierce battle ensued. Ling Han gritted his teeth. So it appeared that the thunder battle armor was actually a level 10 spirit tool. If not, how could it possibly become a threat to three gods? Their battle prowess had indeed been suppressed, but that was still battle prowess on the level of the Shattering Void tier. Against an opponent of the Heaven tier, they'd be able to kill him with a few blows. All those years ago, Zhi Xuan could only be ranked 4th among the 7 of them in the Heaven tier. Had she done that deliberately to conceal her skill, or did Sword Emperor and the others also possess a 10th tier spirit tool that could dominate her thunder battle armor? Ling Han sighed. At that time, he had his whole focus on alchemy, and did not consider their ranking in terms of martial arts seriously at all. He had only thought that as long as he could break through to the Shattering Void tier, he'd be able to push open the doors to the realm of gods and simultaneously suppress Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, that bandit. He had no idea that there was such a huge gulf between himself and the rest of them. Now, he was very clear that he possessed battle prowess of over a dozen battle stars, and the installation of power from the Black Tower could raise his battle prowess to the next tier, and that kind of battle prowess was practically enough to defy logic. As a result, he did not have any such trump card of martial arts in his last life, but was still able to rank as the 7th strongest in the world and stand equal to Sword Emperor and the others. Now that he thought about it, he felt himself flush. Fuck, a real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. If I ever see Sword Emperor and the others again, I will definitely thrash them until their backsides burst. Who asked me to spend all my energy on alchemy in my last life? In terms of achievements in alchemy, even Sword Emperor, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and Nalan too have to obediently address me as Grandmaster and beg me to concoct alchemical pills for them. Ling Han praised himself internally, then continued to watch the scene. In truth, though the battle was fierce, it was only repeating endlessly by now. Zhi Xuan could always turn the tables around in a dangerous situation by using the thunder battle armor and force the three old men into a flustered chaos. She would then take advantage of the opening created and charge out of their siege, which made Ling Han feel a bit bored. However, the events recorded in the memory crystal could only be broadcast according to the order in which they had happened, and there was no way to fast forward, pause, slow forward, or rewind. Thus, Ling Han could only watch quietly. Yet, after quite a long time fighting, not only Ling Han was bored of watching the same scene repetitively, those three old men also appeared to have had enough. With the thunder battle armor to protect her, if we continue to battle this way, we will not be able to subdue her, the old man on the left side said. Indeed. The old man on the right side agreed with a nod. The old man in the center thought for a moment, then said, then I shall use a sliver of divine power and destroy this thunder battle armor. Then the regulations of this realm would immediately react and expel you, or even wound you severely, the old man on the left side said, frowning. We can no longer take that into account. If we allow her to expose the secret and the people of this realm were able to prepare themselves, it may ruin the plans that the clan has worked on for 10,000 years. Furthermore, if the reason for the failure lies on our side, those other parties will definitely create trouble for us, the old man in the center said. Fine then, you must be careful. The old man on the left side nodded. It's all right. I will control my power and use only enough to pierce through the thunder battle armor, so the backlash that I will experience from the power of regulation would not be too severe. The old man in the center wore a cold expression. A white electric light floated out of his white eyes, and all of a sudden, his aura spiked up madly. It was only that one instant, and his power had completely surpassed the shattering void tier. God tier. This was the power of gods. Ling Han sensed for the strength of this power, and in comparison, his power as one of the heaven tier in his last life was like a drop of water set against a great sea, not qualified to be compared against such power at all. Additionally, this kind of power had already far surpassed Azura Demon Emperor he had faced previously. The other two old men simultaneously shot away, as if they would be implicated as well if they had stayed at their original positions. They had reacted correctly. A crack in the empty space appeared behind that old man without any prior signs, and immediately transformed into something like a gigantic mouth. It opened and closed abruptly, swallowing that old man into unknown depths. Was that the expulsion from the power of the realm? It directly sent the old man out of this world. Ling Han was delighted. The old man had yet to deliver his attack before being expelled by the power of the realm, so now that Zhi Xuan had one powerful opponent less that she had to worry about, she should definitely have a chance at winning. Yet he had barely finished this thought when he saw that the very instant before that crack closed up, a white lightning spear was rapidly shot out of it. This was different from the previous attacks. This lightning spear was at least 100 times stronger than before, and what was more terrifying was that there were patterns weaving around on this lightning spear, and the might exuding from it was enough to make even one at the shattering void tier shiver in fear. This was the most terrifying attack of a god. It was not power, but rather martial intent, a martial intent that would completely crush its opponent. Ling Han's expression took a swift turn. That old man had still managed to deliver his attack at the last instant right before he had been expelled by the power of the realm. That was too terrifying. Pooh! Zhi Xuan was not given any opportunity to avoid nor parry. This spear directly pierced through her delicate body. So what if it was the thunder battle armor she was wearing? A hole was still directly pierced through it. Ling Han finally understood. So that was how the hole on the thunder battle armor was created. Ah! Zhi Xuan screamed. She had received this blow right on her heart, and this spear directly pierced through her chest, so her heart must have exploded. Even if she was in the shattering void tier, she probably wouldn't live for much longer. Ling Han could not help but tense. Could it be that Zhi Xuan would fall here? Yet Zhi Xuan, on the other hand, ran like crazy, and as she removed the thunder battle armor, she said, "Boundless Mountain, Clear Harmony Palace Hall has the answer to all. Person of the future, everything that you've been told about in the past were lies. The real answer lies there, and you must obtain it. Otherwise, the calamity will be repeated." With a toss, the thunder battle armor flew out through the sky, and her figure became smaller and smaller below, and soon disappeared without a trace. Obviously, the memory crystal was on the thunder battle armor. The thunder battle armor traversed over an immeasurable distance and finally fell down upon the ground. Every pattern had lost its brilliance, and it was as if it had become a most ordinary battle armor. This condition of stillness persisted for about a few days. Then, the scene suddenly stopped, which was probably because there was a limit to the information that the memory crystal could record. It was full. Ling Han's divine sense automatically left the memory crystal and appeared back in the Black Tower. As the master of all in this place, he could very clearly judge that less than the time it takes to take a breath had passed. Anything that happened in one's divine sense had no effect on real time. It was as if it was a dream. One might have dreamt of living a whole lifetime, but when one awoke, only a few hours had passed. Uncountable guesses appeared in Ling Han's mind. He was also feeling a coldness that came from his very heart. Chapter 359, Unsealing the Battle Armor. According to historical records, more than 9,000 years ago, a massive chaos occurred, a tremendous calamity in which uncountable people died. As a result, a lapse appeared in the fields of martial arts and alchemy. Afterwards, the Heaven Sword sect, the Absolute Saber sect, and various other sects stepped out and joined forces to pacify the utter chaos, which was what led to the peace that the future generations had enjoyed for the subsequent 8,000 and more years. Compared with the absolute disaster at that time, the current fighting and killing were only a small matter. Ling Han had a guess. The huge chaos at that time had been incited by the party that those three old men represented. Zhu Xuan Er and they were members of the same race. They had wanted to bring her back to the realm of gods but were met with refusal, as she wanted to live or die with this world. Ling Han had personally witnessed her ultimate end. Though he had not seen the final scene in which she died in battle, without the thunder battle armor, with her heart pierced, and two god-level pursuers behind her, how could she have managed to escape alive? Zhu Xuan Er was a disciple of the Blue Thunder sect, and in this current era, the Blue Thunder sect was still standing firm and strong in the Middle State. It was said that they were one of the major parties that stood against the chaos all those years ago. In that case, Zhu Xuan's race probably didn't have anything to do with the Blue Thunder sect. They had only discovered that there was a member of their race in the Blue Thunder sect and thus had the intention of bringing her back to the realm of gods. Jiang Yufeng and the others, several hundred elites of the Heaven tier combined together, battled an ultimate elite of the Shattering Void tier. According to the time, that person could very possibly be an invader from the realm of gods, or even a god himself. However, because he was suppressed by the power of the realm, he could only possess the battle prowess on the level of the Shattering Void tier. So ultimately, he was dragged into a battle of resilience by so many elites of the Heaven tier, then killed through their combined forces? Theoretically, that was probable. But the problem here was, why did the realm of gods want to invade this world? It was public opinion that the realm of gods should be rich in resources, and divine herbs would be growing everywhere there. Simply picking any one of them and swallowing it would allow a normal person to immediately become a god. Even if he was not able to become a god, then he should still at least shoot up to the Heaven tier, or the Shattering Void tier. What feature of this world would then attract the covetous eyes of such a rich place? It was just like how the various parties of the North region were disdainful of the desolate North because even if they conquered the latter, what was the point? Only those minor, insignificant parties would think of striving for a niche in the desolate North. Could it be that the realm of gods had such parties as well? They could no longer survive in the realm of gods, and so decided to travel to this world? No, that was not right. Those three old men said that they wanted to bring Zhu Xuan back, which meant that they had no plans to stay here for a long time. Additionally, Zhu Xuan mentioned that they wanted to destroy the whole human race. That was not something a conqueror would do. Without subjects, was a ruler still a ruler? Most important were Zhu Xuan's last words. She said that everything the future generation heard were lies. What could that mean? In terms of her era, she must have been talking about that huge calamity that had happened about 10,000 years ago. It was not true. It was only a lie. Ling Han could not help but feel a headache coming on. What should have been a very logical story seemed to have been completely turned upside down with a few words from Zhi Xuan Er. But Zhi Xuan Er was so determined to send out these words even if it meant that she would die in battle, so how could she possibly be joking around? That was definitely impossible. It appeared that he definitely had to make a trip to the Clear Harmony Palace Hall at the Boundless Mountain and find the answer Zhi Xuan Er had buried there. He knew where the Boundless Mountain was, the middle state. Of course, it might no longer be called the Boundless Mountain by now. Furthermore, after 10,000 years, was the Clear Harmony Palace Hall still standing? He'd think about it in future. Ling Han sighed. You obviously had the memory crystal on you, so why hadn't you simply recorded all the answers inside instead of forcing him to have to make a side trip to the Boundless Mountain? Small Tower, can you repair this battle armor? He asked. No. Small Tower moved left and right. This was a gesture it made when it was shaking its head. If it was nodding, it would move forwards and backwards. Ling Han was already familiar with its gestures. It paused, then continued, however, I can disperse the various energies within so that this battle armor could still be used for a while. Ling Han was delighted, then said, then, come over quickly. Small Tower trembled slightly, and a powerful might gushed forth. The thunder battle armor instantly floated midair and began to shake. Z. Multiple patterns on it lit up, and then extinguished. However, it was only a short while before this battle armor fell back down onto the ground with a smack. It's done, Small Tower said expressionlessly. Ling Han was not that surprised anymore. It had also erased the tool spirit in the demon birth sword as easily and as quickly like it had done now. Moreover, this was only a level 10 spirit tool that was severely damaged. He put on the thunder battle armor and tried to activate it. Z. Multiple patterns lit up, and abruptly, there were uncountable lightning bolts jumping all over his body. It was not just his torso, but his whole body, and they formed a barrier of lightning. Ling Han gave a wave of his hand, and Xiao, a blazing white electric light shot out into the distance and transformed into a sharp blade. He delivered a punch, and the electric light transformed into a blazing white fist that possessed formidable force behind it. With a sharp whistle, he attacked repeatedly with both hands. Xiao. Fist chi and sword chi were shot out simultaneously and, compounded by the thunder battle armor, transformed into blazing white swords of lightning and fists of thunder. Ling Han could not help but laugh uncontrollably. This thunder battle armor had at least given him a power upgrade of 5 battle stars. Furthermore, this was only in terms of attack. He had yet to try out its defense, but he believed that this barrier of thunder would definitely not be weak. He was only capable of activating a portion of the patterns on the thunder battle armor now. In other words, with the advancement of his cultivation level, the might of the thunder battle armor would also advance accordingly. However, it could not possibly reach the level of the shattering void tier anymore, because the 2 holes in its front and back were still there. That meant there was a portion of patterns missing, and no matter what, it could not possibly display its strongest abilities anymore. Zhi Xuan Er, we have not had many relations in the past, but the choice you've made has impressed me very much. Don't worry, I will definitely find the answer that you have left behind, and not allow the calamity to happen again. Ling Han said somberly. After making this oath, he shrugged on his outer garments. The thunder battle armor was a high-level spirit tool and could actually adapt accordingly to the different physique of its wearer. Thus, while he was obviously taller and broader than Zhi Xuan Er, he did not feel it was in any way tight when wearing this battle armor. There was still that bottle. Ling Han opened it and looked inside. There was only a drop of purple-colored blood inside, and it was exuding a very powerful aura, instantly making him feel as if his skin was being pared by knives, like his skin was going to crack. Was this Zhi Xuan Er's blood? Ling Han replaced the lid on the bottle. This might be the key to opening the place in the Clear Harmony Palace Hall where Zhi Xuan had buried her answer, so he could not use it now. He exited the Black Tower. There was still some time left until dinner. Furthermore, if they wanted to go to the Duan residence, they would have to go in the middle of the night, and it was still a little too early now. He had free time anyways, so he called Lu Yutong and the others over and began to teach them martial arts. First was an inquiry session. He asked them to inform him of the difficulties they had encountered during cultivation, which he would clarify and answer. After that, he taught them different cultivation and martial arts techniques based on their different abilities. He did not need to teach Lu Yutong, however. Zhu Wuxia was a swordsman as well, so Ling Han taught him the Four Seasons sword technique. Can Yi wielded a saber. Unfortunately, Ling Han had not managed to get any supreme saber technique from the setting Sun Saber Emperor. However, there was no shortage of saber techniques in his head, so he found a Black Demon saber technique which he had Can Yi learn. This was a black grade high-level martial arts technique, and it was an excellent choice for his current level. It could nearly be considered Earth grade. At the moment, Lu Yutong was at the 8th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, whereas Zhu Wuxia was at the 5th. They had improved very rapidly. This was naturally due to the alchemical pills they had taken. Ling Han warned them repeatedly that they must not be in a rush to break through when they reached the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, but should rather strengthen their foundations firmly before taking the final step of breaking through. Otherwise, the cultivation that had been accumulated with the use of alchemical pills would be too weak, and it would be impossible for them to climb to the highest level of their cultivation. At night, Guang Yuan finally came downstairs and joined them for dinner. Then, they quietly waited for midnight to arrive. Chapter 360, A Ghostly Manor. Only Guang Yuan and Ling Han were to participate in the movement this time round. They were only going to take a look at things, and not going there looking for a fight. Thus, they did not need too many people with them. Furthermore, only Can Yi could be considered as an acceptable fighter amongst their group, the others were still too inexperienced. As for Yu Kaiyu, he was still snoring loudly away. After drinking so much, he would definitely not be waking up before tomorrow. Ling Han and Guang Yuan made use of the darkness of the night to move, and wove through all the main streets and small alleys of the Sea Breeze City. Soon, a massive manor appeared in front of their eyes. Multiple lanterns were hung all around the manor, hinting at the tremendous wealth the manor's owner possessed. Ling Han leaped up onto the roof, and as he swept his eyes over, surprise filled his expression. Although it was completely bright all around the manor, inside the manor itself, there was only darkness as not one room was lit. Even if it could be explained by saying that it was already midnight and thus most people would have slept by now, it was still strange for such a huge manor to be completely as dark as ink like this. Guang Yuan instantly wanted to climb over the walls and enter, yet was restrained by Ling Han. "There's an alarm array in place," Ling Han said. Even without making use of the Eye of Truth, he could still sense it with his divine sense of the heaven tier. Guang Yuan immediately stopped. He naturally did not have the slightest bit of doubt about Ling Han's words. This young man was too terrifying. He was only 17 years old, and not only was he already an Earth-grade alchemist, Ling Han was also his equal in martial arts. "Can you dismantle it?" he asked quietly. Ling Han smiled faintly and answered, "It's not too difficult." This was only an alarm array, and not a massive array like the Mountain Protection Great Array. Furthermore, because Ling Han had entered so many ancient historical sites in the past, this was the type of array that he was most familiar with. The Black Tower was getting more and more abundant in materials, and only a thought from Ling Han was needed to withdraw them one after another. Soon enough, he had torn a hole into the alarm array and stepped into the manor with Guang Yuan at his side. How eerie! Guang Yuan could not help but fold his arms. Ling Han nodded. From the outside, he had already sensed that there was something off with how dark the manor was. Now that he had stepped into the manor, there was an additional feeling of eeriness and terror. The two of them passed through the garden and entered a courtyard on tiptoes. They observed silently from the corner. In an uncertain situation, it was naturally best to be extremely careful and cautious. However, after only a short while, the both of them looked surprised, and exchanged a look. Such a massive manor was actually as silent as a grave, and there was not the slightest bit of sound to be heard. Even if it was the middle of the night and the residents were all asleep, there should still be the sound of breathing, right? However, this place was so quiet that there wasn't even the sound of people breathing. It was as if all the residents of this manor had been massacred and no one was left alive. They entered the courtyard and began their search. However, as they searched one room after another, their expressions became increasingly dark. There was no one in any of the rooms. There was neither any living person nor any corpse. What was going on here? Let's go take a look over there. Ling Han pointed at another courtyard. Guang Yuan nodded, and the two of them went to search the other courtyard. However, the results were the same. There was no one, alive nor dead. Let's separate and search. After 1 hour, we will meet back at the place we came in, Ling Han said. This manor was very large, and for courtyards alone, there were close to 20 of them here. All right. After an hour, the two of them appeared back at the point of their entry. They shook their heads respectively. Neither of them had found anything. There was not a single person in this whole manor. How could this be? Let's go out first and examine it from the outside, Ling Han said. The two of them exited the Duan residence and waited for daybreak. When the cockerel crowed, they saw the manor suddenly come alive. One after another, people came out of their rooms, and life came back to the manor instantly. Ling Han and Guang Yuan exchanged a look, yet a cold feeling rose up from their very hearts. This was too abnormal. If you look closely, the crowd seemed to have all come from that room, Ling Han said. Currently, he and Guang Yuan were seated on the top of a loft. Thanks to their high position, they could see very clearly. Guang Yuan nodded. I've seen that room before. It should be a very ordinary hall. But it definitely can't contain so many people. Moreover, I've checked it before. At that time, there was definitely no one inside. Not even a damn shadow of a person. Ling Han looked curious at this, and said, then there must be a secret passage inside. At night, they would enter through this secret passage, and then come out at dawn. No wonder we didn't find anyone yesterday. They should have hidden themselves in an underground secret chamber. But what makes me curious is, why would they have to do that? This was the Duan residence, their own territory. What was the reason for them to leave their comfortable rooms and hide underground instead? We'll go back first, then come back tonight for another probe, Ling Han said. This time, even he was starting to feel very curious. When the two of them returned to the inn, Yu Kai-yun had finally woken up, but he still had a hangover and was currently gripping onto his head. Any slightly loud sound was enough to make him bare his teeth in pain. Let's see if you dare to get yourself drunk again. Ling Han laughed deliberately loudly. Yu Kai-yu hurriedly covered his ears and asked, I seem to remember you were the one who had purposely encouraged me to drink? Ling Han laughed and said, go and drink some ginger soup. I'll bring you to a nice place tonight. Yu Kai-yu instantly looked at Ling Han strangely and said, I say, you already have 2 beautiful girls, and you still want to go to indulge in sensual pleasures? It'd be fine for me alone to go to that kind of place. Ling Han was at a loss at first before he finally realized what he was taking about. He couldn't help but shake his head, then said, what filthy thoughts. Pay. I'm not as filthy as you. You already have 2 beautiful girls, and you're still interested in those women outside. Yu Kai-yu expressed his disdain. After Yu Kaiyu meditated for a while and completely recovered from his hangover, Ling Han introduced Zhu Wujiu, Kan Yi, and Guang Yuan to him. Since you all are junior brother Han's friends, then you all will be my friends from now on as well, he said very boldly. This was to give face to Ling Han. If it was anyone else, the young master of the Yu clan would not be in such a good temper. He was at first planning to urge Ling Han to set out, yet Ling Han said he wanted to buy some items at the Sea Breeze City and prepare a bit. Additionally, he also wanted to bring Yu Kaiyu to a nice place tonight. As a result, he could only suppress this urge and went to buy some rations as well. It would at least take them half a year after they had entered the Dark Devil Forest, so he had to ensure that they were sufficiently prepared. As the only grandson of the Yu clan, he naturally had a spatial ring of his own. He was initially a bit proud, but when he saw that even Hunyo had one when she took out some dried meat to chew on, he was instantly struck with a blow. Furthermore, when he smelt the delicious aroma of the meat, he could feel his mouth begin to water. This guy had really thick skin. He actually went to beg for some meat from Hunyo. And Hunyo, who usually thought of food as if it was her very life, very generously gave him a piece, which made Yu Kaiyu scarf it down with his eyebrows twitching. Gods, how could there be something so delicious in this world? Within a few moments, Yu Kaiyu was completely bought over by Hunyo. At night, when Ling Han called over Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu and the group set out towards the Duan residence, he heard Yu Kaiyu deadpan, "Junior brother Han, so Hunyo is your cup of tea?" "TSK, TSK, TSK. You really have a unique taste, to like this kind of young sprout." Chapter 361, Going Underground. Ling Han almost stumbled. What did this guy see that caused him to arrive at that conclusion? "When did you become blind?" he asked in annoyance. Yu Kaiyu laughed lightly, and said, "If you hadn't conned the little girl, why would Hunyo keep chattering to me and say that you are Nyo's?" Ling Han was dumbstruck. Hunyo was a really mischievous child, plus she was clever. She knew that Yu Kaiyu was his cousin, so she switched her strategy to getting on good terms with his family. If they managed to find his mother, then with this little girl's skill, wouldn't she be perfectly capable of charming Yu Hongchang so much that she would recognize her as her little daughter-in-law? And after another 10 or so years, this little girl would have grown up to become a young girl, and for a genius like Ling Han, it was practically a definite fact that he would break through to the flower blossom tier. Then compared to a lifespan of at least a few hundred years, wouldn't 10 years pass in what might seem to be the blink of an eye? Ling Han could not help but shake his head as he wondered what thoughts were flying around in Hunyo's little head. "Since you like the little girl, then just yield the other 2 beautiful girls to me," Yu Kaiyu said, slinging an arm around Ling Han's shoulder. "Ha, ha." Ling Han laughed dryly, and said, "One of them is my little female attendant, and the other is my alchemist apprentice. Just think, if you marry either one of them, what are you going to address me as?" "Pei, you are really too devious, just holding on to them and not doing anything but not letting anyone take over either. I look down on you," Yu Kaiyu exclaimed, filled with righteous indignation. "Speak less nonsense. We've arrived at the Duan residence." Ling Han lowered his hand. They had arrived in front of the Duan residence. Isn't this Duan Zhengji's house?" Yu Kaiyu looked confused. "You know him?" Ling Han asked. "Kind of. He came to pay a visit to the sect before. After all, he is in the spiritual pedestal tier, and is quite a strong martial artist. Furthermore, the Sea Breeze City is located right below the sect, so we are very closely linked together. Now that an elite of this level has appeared, he would naturally have to report to the sect and make his stand clear so that we can ensure that he would not break the rules of the sect," Yu Kaiyu pointed out. He paused, then continued, "What are we doing here? You couldn't have possibly fallen for his daughter who's just a few years old, right?" "Fuck you." Ling Han rolled his eyes. As he dismantled the alarm array, he said, "You'll see later, but I hope you won't yell crazily with your big mouth. Who do you think I am? You think that I don't even have that little bit of self-control." Yu Kaiyu humphed. 10 minutes later. Ghost. Ghost. Yu Kaiyu looked a little pale. Is this place really the home of living people? Why isn't there any single living person inside? Ling Han and Guang Yuan exchanged a grin. They had deliberately brought Yu Kaiyu around the manor on a tour, resulting in this empty manor and eerie surroundings causing Yu Kaiyu to feel his hair stand on end. Come on. As they advanced, Ling Han explained the disputes between Guang Yuan and Duan Zheng for Yu Kaiyu's benefit. It was only now that Yu Kaiyu understood why they had come here. However, he was curious himself by now. What was going on with this Duan residence? Why had everyone disappeared in the middle of the night? They arrived at the hall that they had seen at daytime and began to search carefully throughout it. However, this secret passage seemed to be extraordinarily well hidden. They had searched for about an hour, but still had not managed to find it. Ling Han stopped and activated the Eye of Truth. Ow 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 ow. Previously, when he had battled the 7 sons of Ao family successively, he had overused the Eye of Truth. Even now, it had not fully recovered. Thus, the moment he activated the Eye of Truth, bloody tears streamed out of his right eye. The sight was very chilling. He quickly withdrew the mystical power. The sweeping glance just now was enough for him to discover the location of the secret passage. It was really easy. However, the secret passage was easy to find, but it might not be that way to find the mechanism to reveal it. Because they still did not want to alert anyone, they naturally could not cause too much damage and use the most direct and violent method to directly crash in. Thankfully, the 3 of them were all in the spiritual ocean tier, and had a very sensitive divine sense. After confirming the location of the secret passage, it would be much easier to look for the mechanism to open it. After over another 10 minutes, they found the secret on one of the walls. They moved a painting slightly, and a dark, cold cave opening had appeared on the floor tiles. Are we really going in? Yu Kaiyu asked with a bit of hesitation. He was not the slightest bit foolish. There were so many places inside the Duan residence, yet it appeared to be like a ghostly manor. Furthermore, there was a secret passage here, and it was possible that everyone had hidden within. Choosing to stay underground when they had perfectly comfortable rooms to sleep in, there was definitely something strange going on. Moreover, Duan Zheng was in the spiritual pedestal tier, and if he discovered them, would they be killed to ensure that the secret was not leaked out? Of course. Ling Han nodded. His curiosity was completely ignited. Aren't you scared that we won't be able to come back out? Yu Kaiyu asked sullenly, feeling like he really had boarded a ship of thieves. It's fine. I'm here, Ling Han said with full confidence. This was not an exaggeration on his part. With the Black Tower for them to hide themselves in, they need not worry about anything that will threaten their lives, at least in a small place like this world. How would Yu Kaiyu know what Ling Han was thinking? However, he was also certain he could not convince Ling Han otherwise, what more when he himself was curious as well as slightly alert under the eyes of the Winter Moon sect. What was Duan Zheng planning to do? They entered the secret passage and went downwards all the way. It was very dark, and after they had walked for about 100 meters, the stairs stopped. Instead, a long corridor had appeared in front of them. There were doors on both sides of the corridor, which likely meant that there were many rooms behind these doors. Ling Han stuck close to one of the doors and listened for a while. He made a gesture of pushing the door open, and Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu nodded, signaling that they were prepared. If there was anyone inside, they would swiftly subdue him. Ling Han pressed his hands against the doors, used a bit of force, and the doors were opened. The doors were not locked. Woo! The 3 of them immediately covered their noses. There was a powerful stench wafting out from inside the room. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. However, they still instantly leaped in. When their eyes swept over the inside of the room, shock filled their expressions. This room was very small, so small that it could only contain a large bed. What was shocking was the fact that it was not a bed that was set inside, but rather a coffin. Unlucky. Unlucky. Yu Kaiyu hurriedly retreated. No wonder there was a powerful stench. This was a tomb and the corpse had all rotted, so of course there would be a strong stench coming from inside. Guang Yuan was right behind him, whereas Ling Han was the last. We don't have to look anymore, right? This should be an underground tomb, Yu Kaiyu said. Ling Han shook his head, and said, if this is an underground tomb, then where have all the living people gone to? This was indeed something they could not figure out. Let's go and take another look. The three of them continued to advance, and a crossroads appeared in front of them, where even more doors could be seen ahead. Let's continue on. Ling Han was determined to get to the bottom of this matter. They continued to advance, and suddenly, they could smell an overwhelming stench, as if there was a mountain of corpses ahead of them. The smell was strong enough to cause someone to pass out from suffocation. The three of them wore very ugly expression, and disgust had turned their faces pale. They held their breaths. With the ability of the spiritual ocean tier, it was definitely not a problem for them to hold their breaths for about an hour. An underground river appeared in front of them, and there were multiple corpses floating in it. Chapter 362, Secret of the Duan Clan. In one of the large manors in the city, all the residents were living underground in the middle of the night. Furthermore, this place had a horrendous stench to it, and there was even a river that was filled with floating corpses. No matter how they looked at it, there was something very strange going on here. Where had these corpses come from? Understanding flashed suddenly through Ling Han's head, and he exclaimed, let's go back. He instantly made a move. When he reached a door, he pushed it open and there was yet another coffin inside. Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan came over as well. One of them asked, what have you found out? This morning, we obviously saw many people come out of the room above us, which means that they were all here. But we can't find even one single person now, so why do you think this is the case? Ling Han countered with a question. Guang Yuan's expression instantly changed drastically, and he exclaimed, it can't be that you suspect that these people have hidden themselves in those coffins? How could that be? With such a horrible stench here, the mere smell would be enough to suffocate anyone to death. For us, this is a terrible stench, but for some, this is a wonderful place for cultivation, Ling Han said calmly. How could that be? Yu Kaiyu exclaimed in shock. Ling Han did not answer. He simply gripped the lid of the coffin and gave it a firm push. Zhi. The coffin opened, and a man was revealed within. He was wearing brightly colored clothing, with a lifelike expression on his face. He did not look like a corpse at all. This is someone of the Duan residence, I saw him at daytime. Guang Yuan said, his voice trembling slightly. He was in the spiritual ocean tier, so he would not easily forget anyone he had seen before, what more when it was something so fresh, he had just seen him this morning. But he was still alive at day, yet lay in a coffin at night, and a horrible stench was emanating from all over his body. How could he accept this reality? How could this be possible? Yu Kaiyu whispered. But the person in the coffin seemed to have really become a corpse, and there was absolutely no signs of him waking up at all. Ling Han shook his head, and said, as long as it's related to a particular sect, then it would be possible. What sect? Yu Kaiyu asked in shock. The Thousand Corpse sect. Ling Han answered solemnly. Yu Kaiyu's expression changed again. He wanted to refute, but did not have the strength to. Previously, rumors had indeed spread out from the Falling Moon Gorge, saying that the Thousand Corpse sect had been revived. However, the benevolent see benevolence, and the wise do not believe in rumors. The Winter Moon sect did not believe one bit that the Thousand Corpse sect that had disappeared for millennia would once again see the light of day. But seeing this scene in front of his eyes, Yu Kai-yu had no option but to believe in those rumors. Aside from the Thousand Corpse sect, what other party would be accompanied by corpses? How could any normal person bear to live in such surroundings? Has this sect really been revived? He asked, his face pale. There have been uncountable sects that have perished throughout history, but none of them were as notorious as the Thousand Corpse sect. Furthermore, its notoriety had lasted for millennia. Anyone who still remembered it would recall it with gritted teeth. That showed how despicable and hated the things that the Thousand Corpse sect had done all those years ago were. True, everyone would die. But to be dug out after their death and manipulated by another, forced to become a corpse soldier under their control, who could tolerate that? What do you think? Ling Han gazed at the man lying within the coffin. He had only briefly looked over the coffin just now, but now, upon closer examination, he could detect that there was corpse chi encircling the person lying in the coffin. In the beginning, how could he have imagined that this would be a branch of the Thousand Corpse sect? We must immediately return and bring this news back to the sect. Yu Kai-yu said hurriedly. If the Thousand Corpse sect really had made a comeback, then not only did they need to inform their sect, they would even have to announce it to the whole world, and mobilize the whole world to stand against this party. Otherwise, if the Thousand Corpse sect was given time to solidify their base, then most probably, about all the graves of the entire world would have been dug out. Ling Han looked like he was listening closely to something. Then he shook his head and said, "I'm afraid we won't be able to leave." That is indeed correct. A voice suddenly rose up from behind them. Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan turned around at the same time and saw that there was a man who looked to be in his 40s standing in the doorway. He was of medium build and had a handsome face. Though he did not look young anymore, he would still be capable of charming the hearts of a large number of aunties. Duan Zhengji. Guang Yuan's eyes widened. Duan Zhengji smiled faintly, rubbed his chin, and said, "Guang Yuan, I was just wondering when I should call you over and refine you into my corpse soldier. But I never thought that you would actually deliver yourself to my doorstep." Guang Yuan's cultivation level was too low, so he did not have much knowledge about the Thousand Corpse sect. But merely hearing the phrase corpse soldier was enough to make one's heart shudder, so he knew that it could not be anything good. His heart trembled in his chest, and he exclaimed, "How did Qing-yu die?" He naturally did not believe that Qing-yu had died from illness now, and could not help but fly into an uncontrollable rage. Qing-yu? Duan Zhengji smiled calmly. "Oh, she objected to my joining our sacred sect, so I could only refine her into my corpse soldier so that she would stay by my side eternally." "You're inhumane!" Guang Yuan shouted in fury, flames of rage practically shooting from his eyes. Duan Zhengji laughed loudly, and answered, "Of course I'm not human. Now that I have entered into this divine sect, our lives have transcended the level of mortals. In my eyes, you all are merely food, and materials to be refined into corpse soldiers. Forget it. I can't be bothered to waste my words on you. Just obediently become my corpse soldiers." After he was done talking, he actually turned around and left. "Stop." Guang Yuan, in his fury, did not care any longer that Duan Zhengji was in the spiritual pedestal tier and was much more powerful than himself. He merely wanted to chase after him. However, he had just reached the doorway when he saw a palm strike shooting towards him. The palm was as thin as withered bones and completely black, emanating a strong repulsive stench. Guang Yuan quickly halted and delivered a punch. Martial intent encircled his fist, and he shot out 2 flashes of fist chi. Pang! With this exchange of blows, Guang Yuan was instantly flung backwards, but his opponent did not get any advantage either. He was also forced to retreat multiple steps backward, and it was only when he collided with the wall behind him that he finally stopped. "What is this damn thing?" Yu immediately exclaimed in shock. It was a half-rotted corpse that had blocked Guang Yuan, but it was as if there were invisible strings moving it around. It was actually capable of moving nimbly and freely by itself, and it immediately attacked again, charging into the room. This room was already pitifully small in the first place, and now that another person had entered, there was practically almost no space left even for movement, and it was extremely cramped. Guang Yuan attacked in his madness. He was extraordinarily furious, and wanted to kill Duan Zheng at all costs. That would be a corpse soldier. It's formed by using some special technique to refine a dead body into something akin to a puppet, Ling Han said. If it wasn't for the fact that the main ingredient to produce it was a human body, such a creation would really deserve to be called genius. You're impressed by it? Yu sucked his teeth. From a certain aspect, yes. However, Ling Han's eyes iced over. This 1,000-corpse sect must be eliminated. I agree with that, but now, it would be difficult for us to even escape. Yu said. Don't worry. I told you that we would be able to leave safely. Ling Han smiled calmly. He stretched out his left hand and pressed down on the man in the coffin. Multiple black patterns appeared. This was the power of regulation that he had obtained after he had refined the demonic qi. In the past, he had merely touched Feng Yan and the latter's whole left leg was gone. Pooh! He struck out with a palm, and instantly, a large hole appeared in the chest of the man lying in the coffin. However, the man's eyes snapped open abruptly. He stared at Ling Han with white eyes, but in the next instant, his head tilted, and he was now completely dead. Chapter 363, Great Battle Against the Corpse Soldiers. Duan Zheng. Guang Yuan's fury had reached extreme depths. He exchanged a furious series of attacks with that corpse soldier, wanting to chase away this rock that was blocking his way, catch up to Duan Zheng, and make him pay for his evil deeds. Yet, the corpse soldier, having no fear of death nor the sensation of pain, did not step back a single inch and continued to battle furiously with him. That's odd, Duan Zheng left just like that? Yu was surprised. It would be a piece of cake to subdue 3 people in the spiritual ocean tier like them if Duan Zheng, who was in the spiritual pedestal tier, had acted personally. Ling Han smiled and said, Duan Zheng disdained from making his move, most likely because he has full confidence we will not be able to escape. You can still smile in this situation when we're heavily surrounded? Yu forced out through gritted teeth. Then what other expression do you want me to have? Ling Han laughed loudly, and continued to say boldly, don't worry. Since I've brought the 2 of you out, I will bring the 2 of you back as well. Hopefully not as 3 corpses. Yu sighed. Not as 3 corpses, but rather 3 corpse soldiers. A voice was heard from outside the doorway, yet it was not Duan Zheng. Instead, the voice belonged to another man. There's someone else here? Yu's expression abruptly changed. Ling Han rolled his eyes at him, and said, aren't you spouting nonsense now? How many people are there in the Duan clan? If they were all corpse soldiers, then wouldn't their cover be completely blown during daytime? They are the real disciples of the 1,000-corpse sect, and corpse soldiers are merely their tools. A mere boy is actually so familiar with our sect? A shocked voice could be heard from outside. Ling Han nodded at Yu and said, you go and help out Big Brother Guang, and then we'll charge out. Yu nodded and immediately took a great leap. He flew over Guang Yuan's head and charged to attack that corpse soldier. The exchange of blows between Guang Yuan and that corpse soldier had just forced the 2 of them to retreat successively, and with this added attack from Yu, the corpse soldier was forced to retreat even further backwards. Why do I have to listen to that brat? Yu scratched his head in confusion. He had not considered things carefully before he had moved to do as Ling Han had said, but now that he thought about it, he felt a little depressed. He was the senior brother here. Yet Guang Yuan took his place, and shot out another punch of his own. How big was the stone chamber? With the onslaught of these 3 successive attacks, the corpse soldier was forced out of the room, and Ling Han and the others took advantage of the opening to rush out. However, when they saw the scene outside, they could not help but grit their teeth. There were a lot of corpse soldiers, but there were also a lot of normal-looking people. Obviously, these people were the disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect, and they were the people controlling these corpse soldiers. That's the 3rd elder of the Zhang clan, Zhang Hu. Yu Kai-yu suddenly exclaimed in shock, pointing at one of the corpse soldiers, then turning to point at another. Li Ding of the Li clan. He pointed at a 3rd corpse soldier. Gu Shun Tong of the Gu clan. He pointed out one corpse soldier after another, and managed to call out the names of at least 10 corpse soldiers from when they were still alive. He could not help but look aghast, and exclaimed, "You people are really deranged. These people are already dead, and you still dug them out and refined them into your corpse soldiers. Tisk, tsk, tsk. What do you mean by deranged? These people are already dead anyways, so wouldn't it be better to exploit them of the last of their usefulness and make them contribute more to this society?" A man who was about 50 years old said. "And the 3 of you as well, when we act later, we will try to be as gentle as possible and not damage your bodies too seriously. For 3 people in the spiritual ocean tier, if we're lucky, we may still be able to preserve that kind of ability after we refine them into corpse soldiers." Maniacs. You're all maniacs. Yu Kai-yu shouted angrily. He withdrew a pair of knuckles from within his spatial ring and put them on. They were immediately activated and multiple golden patterns lit up. His battle spirit was soaring like flames of war. Kill them. Those people of the Thousand Corpse sect manipulated their corpse soldiers, which surrounded Ling Han and the others. Limited by their cultivation level and the condition of rearing corpses, disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect were usually only capable of rearing a single corpse soldier, though a few might be able to rear 2. The disciples gathered here were obviously of a normal level, and could not possibly possess the 3 lives corpse caskets like Rong Huan Xian. As a result, each of them only reared a single corpse soldier. But there were more than 10 people here, so naturally there were more than 10 corpse soldiers as well. All of them were in the spiritual ocean tier and were 1st tier silver armored corpses. With absolute superiority in numbers, together with how the corpse soldiers did not fear death and injury, wouldn't it be extremely easy to deal with 3 people in the spiritual ocean tier? Both Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan wore serious expressions, especially Guang Yuan. He wanted to seek justice for Nong Qingyu, so it was even more necessary for him to preserve his own life. Only the weak mourned, whereas the strong would use their fists to make their point. The corpse soldiers had no emotion, and did not know how to speak. With their commands in place, they charged towards Ling Han and the others. Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan immediately moved. Peng, 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 and they were embroiled in a battle with the corpse soldiers. These 2 had not had any experience battling corpse soldiers, and treated them as if they would any other opponent, yet this made their situation dangerous. Because you might deliver a punch to the head of a martial artist and force him to retreat, but the corpse soldiers did not care. You could hit them as you liked, and they would still continue in their path of attack to return a punch as well, or direct a slash at your throat. If a corpse soldier was hit, at most, their heads might be bent out of shape or completely detached. That was all right, they could simply attach it back. But if a martial artist was hit with such a strike, would he still be alive? However, the 2 of them were experienced in battle, and soon adapted their styles of attack. However, they still could not deal with the corpse soldiers, because no matter how much these things were wounded, it would not affect their battle prowess. So how were they supposed to continue fighting against them? You two are really too weak. It's already been so long, and you are still unable to deal with these things? Ling Han sighed. Easier said than done. Why don't you give it a try then? Yu said in irritation. He and Guang Yuan had to battle 7 corpse soldiers each, and every single one of them seemed to have indestructible, immortal bodies. It was only because of his shocking battle prowess that he managed to hold on until now. If he only had about 9 battle stars, then he would have definitely been overwhelmed by now. Ling Han laughed, and said, "You really want me to act?" "Of course. Come on, I'm about to die from exhaustion." Yu urged. He put a considerable amount of trust in Ling Han's battle prowess. "Let's have a bet then. In the time for 10 breaths, I can kill all of these corpse soldiers." Yet Ling Han was not in a rush at all. Ha! Yu naturally did not believe him. Though he also hoped that Ling Han could show off his invincible might and resolve the crisis, but even he only just managed to hold on, yet Ling Han was capable of destroying so many corpse soldiers in the time of 10 breaths. That was obviously impossible. What do you want if you win? He was a man of forthright and bold character, and was not one to yield easily either. I haven't thought of it yet, so why don't you promise to do one thing for me in the future? Ling Han said after some thought. Don't worry. It'll definitely be something within your ability. Fine, then hurry up. If you really manage to kill all these corpse soldiers, I will even be willing to owe you my life. Yu called out loudly. The pressure that the 7 corpse soldiers exerted on him was getting higher and higher. Ling Han laughed. His body moved, and he had already charged to attack a corpse soldier. He shot out a punch and black-colored demonic patterns wove around his fist. Pang! He clashed directly with an attack from the corpse soldier, and his whole body flew backwards from the impact, showing that his ability was actually beneath that corpse soldier's. But the strange thing was, the arm of that corpse soldier began to flake off and dissolve, as if it had become an old skeleton which, with the corrosive power of time, was turned to ashes. Chapter 364, The Battle Armor Shows Its Might. If it was an intelligent life form, it would cut its losses and cut off this arm that was turning into dust to prevent the effects from spreading. However, the corpse soldiers, with their lack of fear of death or pain, had become disadvantaged at this point, because they did not feel it at all, in other words, didn't care about it at all. It still continued to attack Ling Han, as if it was not the one turning into dust. Yet Ling Han took advantage of him being flung away by the impact, and continued to charge towards the second corpse soldier. Like before, he delivered a punch, and the demonic patterns flashed faintly. If these corpse soldiers were human, then after they had seen how their companion suffered, they would definitely have made adjustments to their strategy, and would not attempt a direct clash with Ling Han again. But how could corpse soldiers possess any intelligence? It similarly struck out with a palm strike aimed at Ling Han. Pang! Their attacks collided, and Ling Han was once again thrown back, but the second corpse soldier was also beginning to turn into dust. 3, 4, 5. Ling Han shot forwards, and in only the time needed to take 2 breaths, there were already 5 corpse soldiers that were turning into dust, whereas for the first, the effects had spread to its head, chest, and soon enough, only 2 legs were left still running around. This scene was a bit spine-chilling. Look out! Look out! The disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect continued to call from one side, and issue commands for their corpse soldiers. Yet these corpse soldiers were simply battling on instinct, so how could they possibly understand what "look out" meant? 6, 7, 8, more and more corpse soldiers were dissolving, and completely turning to dust. Within only the time to take 7 breaths, 14 corpse soldiers were all hit, and the earliest 6 had already completely turned into dust. The disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect, as well as Yu and Guang Yuan, all wore expressions of extreme shock. With this, they were all dealt with? So simply? Ling Han smiled calmly. He had not drawn out the demon birth sword yet. If he had, with the destructive power of a 10th-tier spirit tool, it would be capable of delivering an obliterating attack on these silver-armored corpses. If he activated the thunder battle armor, with the natural ability of thunder and lightning to subdue evil, it was also enough to destroy all of these creatures completely. He had more and more trump cards under his sleeve. So how is it? He asked Yu Kaiyu. You're awesome. Yu Kaiyu gave him a thumbs up. He'd personally fought them before, so he was naturally clear how troublesome these corpse soldiers were to deal with. Yet Ling Han dealt each a punch, easily and happily, leaving Yu Kaiyu no choice but to admit his admiration. Duan Zhengji. Guang Yuan roared. His black hair was fluttering in the air, and his rage was about to burn. What a bunch of trash. Duan Zhengji's faint voice was heard. I am in a crucial stage of my cultivation, yet I was first disturbed by 3 rats that had snuck in here, and after mobilizing so many corpse soldiers to kill them, you were still unable to deal with the problem. Tell me, then, what purpose do you have in continuing to live? It would be better if you all became corpse soldiers instead. Those disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect shuddered in fear, cold sweat collecting on their foreheads. They all knelt and said, "Please forgive us, my lord. That brat seems to have got a hold of a unique spirit tool, which is very effective against the corpse soldiers." Duan Zhengji appeared again. His eyes swept over the ash that the corpse soldiers had turned into, and he frowned slightly. He made a hand gesture, and with a Z, a metal coffin slid towards them as if it had legs on its own. It was incomparably strange. Pang, the coffin opened. A woman jumped out from within. Her beautiful features could still be seen, but her skeletal face and arms all proclaimed that she was long dead, and this was only yet another corpse soldier. Guang Yuan's expression changed drastically as he called out in a trembling voice. Qing Yu. Then, his eyes reddened, and he roared at Duan Zhengji in fury, "You animal, you actually turned your own wife into this miserable creature. In any case, that's a spiritual pedestal tier material, so wouldn't it be a pity to waste it?" Duan Zhengji said uncaringly, then he said calmly, "Kill all 3 of them." Qing Yu immediately charged towards the 3 of them. This was only a corpse soldier. It did not have any feelings nor memories, it only had the instincts to kill. Qing Yu. It's me. It's me. Guang Yuan called out loudly. Pang. A palm strike assaulted them, and Ling Han and the others were simultaneously smacked away. They all threw up blood due to the impact. Putting aside Guang Yuan first, who did not have much fighting spirit against his old lover, though Yu Kaiyu was a powerful individual in the spiritual ocean tier, but how could the ability of one in the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier be enough to resist one in the spiritual pedestal tier? Ling Han was indeed a monster, but his cultivation level of the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier was definitely too low. How could he possibly oppose Nong Qingyu, whose ability was close to the 4th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier? Furthermore, Nong Qingyu was too powerful, and there was absolutely no opportunity for Ling Han's demonic patterns to come into contact with her as he was long smacked away forcefully. The gap between the 2 of them was a little too wide. Ling Han stepped out and said, "The 2 of you, step back." He activated the thunder battle armor, and instantly, blazing white bolts of electricity wove around his body. Nong Qingyu had at first pounced towards him, but when she sensed the power of thunder, she actually forced herself to a halt and an expression of loathing actually appeared on her face. Corpse soldiers could have expressions too. That was proof enough of how powerful and effective the thunder battle armor was in restraining such evil creatures. How could this be possible? Duan Zhengji exclaimed in shock. Was this brat specifically born to subdue the 1,000 Corpse sect? How could the spirit tools he had all have this kind of effect? Ling Han laughed loudly. With a wave of his hand, Hong, 7 images of dragons appeared, all formed from blazing white lightning. These dragons charged towards Nong Qingyu. Spirit tools had the ability to compound qi. For example, after Ao Xing Lai used the Black Star Sword, his sword qi was capable of easily shattering even Ling Han's fist qi. Now, these flashes of fist qi had been upgraded by the Thunder Battle Armor, so how powerful would they be then? Even if Ling Han was unable to make use of the full might of the Thunder Battle Armor. Against this punch, Nong Qingyu did not dare to receive it head-on, and she retreated quickly. A corpse soldier that had no fear of death would actually flee on its own? This was definitely a rare sight, and struck the disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect dumb. They practically did not dare to believe what they were seeing. Hung. Duan Zhengji stepped up, and said, "Hand this brat over to me, and you go and kill those two." Nong Qingyu immediately turned and charged towards Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan. "Don't be in a rush to leave." Ling Han laughed loudly, and delivered another punch. The Thunder Battle Armor showed its might, and a total of 7 dragon images appeared in pursuit of Nong Qingyu. "Brat, die." Duan Zhengji charged towards him. Ling Han did not pay him any attention, but rather continued to chase after Nong Qingyu and attack. "How dare you!" Duan Zhengji was enraged. Someone in the spiritual pedestal tier, used his full ability, and yet this brat in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier actually didn't even care to pay him any attention? How much did this brat look down on him? Then you must pay the price. He smirked, and struck forwards with a palm that was aimed directly at Ling Han's back. "Look out!" both Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan exclaimed in shock. "Pa!" His palm strike hit its target, but only a flash of lightning was seen. Ling Han stumbled a bit, whereas Duan Zhengji emitted a muffled humph, a stream of blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. His palm was charred black. This was not because Ling Han had logic-defying power and was capable of wounding even someone in the spiritual pedestal tier, but rather the Thunder Battle Armor was showing its might. "Ha ha ha!" Yu Kaiyu rubbed his hands and laughed loudly. If the elder of the Ao clan saw this sight, his nose would definitely be bent out of shape from his extreme anger. But it's really strange. This battle armor has fallen into the hands of our sect for a few hundred years, yet there has never been one capable of activating it. Why, against all expectations, was this brat able to do it? Could it be that this battle armor was waiting for him in the first place? Chapter 365, Imitation Demonic Noise Saber. The Thunder Battle Armor originated from ancient times. The elder of the Ao clan wanted to take possession of it to pass it down to his descendants. Even if they were unable to activate the powers of the spirit tool, merely the materials used to forge it were qualified to be an indestructible defense to protect the vital areas of the wearer. As such, he advocated it full-heartedly, determined to make this battle armor into the prize for the entry trials. He had also made some sacrifices for this to be possible. After all, everyone knew very well that this battle armor would definitely fall into the possession of one of the 7 sons of Ao family. But now, fantastic! He had paid a double penalty with nothing to show for it. More importantly, Ling Han actually managed to activate the Thunder Battle Armor. That was really too miraculous. It was guaranteed that no one in the Winter Moon sect would believe such a thing. Ling Han, with the might of the Thunder Battle Armor supporting him, actually managed to restrain the battle prowess of 2 powerful opponents in the spiritual pedestal tier. This was firstly because the Thunder Battle Armor was indeed an awesome spirit tool, and secondly because whether it was the disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect or their corpse soldiers, their natures were inherently evil, and thus could be restrained by the nature of lightning which subdued evil. That was why such a brilliant conclusion to the battle was possible. If this was told to others, they would likely die of shock. A brat who was merely in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier was actually capable of standing equally against 2 opponents in the spiritual pedestal tier. Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan had already entered a dumbstruck condition, and the others of the Thousand Corpse sect were more or less in the same condition, too, as they were all astounded by Ling Han's logic-defying battle prowess. "Hung, that's only a spirit tool. Do you think I really have no way to deal with you?" Duan Zhengji humphed coldly. With a sweep of his right hand, a long saber appeared in his hand. Obviously, he possessed a spatial ring. This long saber was a spirit tool, and it possessed multiple patterns engraved on its body that quickly lit up. There was a total of 13 patterns, and they all emanated a dim light. The whole saber seemed to be surrounded by black mist. He waved the saber in a quick slash. Woo, woo, woo. Ghastly wails could actually be heard coming from the saber, and it was as if the noise was capable of devouring their brains, and could make one feel awful. Ah! Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan immediately covered their ears with their hands, but blood still gushed out from their eyes, ears, and mouths. Blood was also seeping out from between their fingers. Apparently, their ears were bleeding as well. Demonic noise devouring brain, killing the 7 apertures. Duan Zhengji smirked. The might of this spirit tool lay not in its sharpness, but rather in its ability to release a demonic noise, and only those who had cultivated corpse chi were immune against it. Years ago, the Thousand Corpse sect possessed 3 priceless treasures: the 3 lives corpse caskets, demonic noise saber, and the pond of the underworld, and this spirit tool was an imitation of the demonic noise saber. It was only a level 5 spirit tool, but it was naturally more than enough to deal with a few people in the spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han was still fine. The thunder battle armor had formed a barrier. This was a level 10 spirit tool. Even if it was damaged, the barrier it formed still possessed a shocking defensive ability and managed to block the demonic noise from harming him. However, this greatly consumed Ling Han's origin power. One needed to continuously feed origin power into the thunder battle armor to keep it activated. After all, without the presence of a tool spirit, one could only use one's own abilities to activate a spirit tool. The best plan to defeat the enemy was naturally to capture their leader. As long as he could subdue Duan Zhengji, the demonic noise would naturally stop. But the problem here was, Duan Zhengji was in the spiritual pedestal tier, so how was he to subdue him? Ling Han immediately leaped over to Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan. He moved suddenly, and with 2 blows, struck both of them unconscious. How could the 2 of them ever imagine that Ling Han would suddenly attack them? Thus, they really had not put up any defenses at all. Moreover, Ling Han was indeed powerful, and that's why he was able to successfully knock the both of them out with a single strike. Duan Zhengji was stupefied as well. What did this mean? Could it be that Ling Han was planning to surrender, and these 2 were his proof of surrender? Even if he was stupefied, the corpse soldier would not. Nong Qingyu immediately charged over with a sharp hiss. "I am not going to play around with you anymore. Great Spirit Heaven Instant Movement Talisman, let's go." Ling Han had one hand holding onto Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan, whereas his other hand randomly drew out a piece of paper, smacked it onto his body, and the 3 of them instantly disappeared. He had naturally entered the Black Tower, but how could Duan Zhengji imagine that there existed such a valuable treasure in this world? Furthermore, after hearing that whatever Great Spirit Heaven Instant Movement Talisman, he assumed that Ling Han had used a spirit talisman to teleport away. Instantly, he released a few roars of rage. "Milord, what do we do?" The others stepped forwards. "Pa, pa, pa, pa." Duan Zhengji gave all of them a harsh slap each, and cursed angrily, "You bunch of trash. You can't even take down 3 people." They could not help but complain internally, "Isn't it the same damn case for you?" However, they only dared to say such words in their heads and did not dare to reveal an inkling of their thoughts on their faces. They all knelt and said, "Please calm your anger, milord." After Duan Zhengji indulged himself in a momentary fit of anger, he commanded, "Retreat." Before daybreak, we must leave the city and abandon this stronghold. Milord, but Elder Jiu Yun is going to come for an inspection 3 days later, one disciple said. Hung, our stronghold here is already exposed. Latest by noon tomorrow, the Winter Moon sect will definitely send some elite martial artists here. Duan Zhengji waved his hand. Elder Jiu Yun is only in the Flower Blossom tier, whereas the Winter Moon sect has elite warriors in the Spiritual Infant tier. If Elder Jiu Yun was allowed to fall into the grasp of the Winter Moon sect, whom amongst you can bear the responsibility? Understood. They all nodded and immediately dispersed to awaken the others, leaving with their corpse soldiers in tow. They still had to destroy this underground basement. Guang Yuan, Guang Yuan. We are really destined archenemies. In the past, you fought with me over a woman, and now, you have forced me to abandon this base that I've operated for years. Don't you let me encounter you again, or I will definitely swallow you whole and skin you alive, to be refined into a skinless corpse soldier. Duan Zhengji declared darkly, leaving in a sweep of his robes. Ling Han naturally saw and heard everything clearly from within the Black Tower. He was not in a rush to leave, either. In any case, the Thousand Corpse sect was planning to retreat. After they had all left, it would not be too late for him to calmly leave. Furthermore, even if he immediately rushed back to the Winter Moon sect at this very moment, he would not have the time to mobilize the elites of the sect to surround and annihilate them. The Thousand Corpse sect, the Thousand Corpse sect, their spirit was really strong. He managed to encounter them everywhere he went. Anyways, he had free time on his hands now, so he might as well use the time to cultivate for a while. Ling Han tossed Guang Yuan and Yu Kai Yu over to one side. He did not plan to wake them, planning to wait until after they had left. He beckoned casually with a hand and an origin crystal appeared. With a thought from him, it shattered with a paw, and instantly, a rich, dense origin power enveloped him. He stimulated his spirit base to absorb it, and within a few moments, he had completely absorbed the origin power that had been so dense that it almost seemed solid just a little while ago. Fuck. Ling Han was astounded. The last 2 days, he had not managed to settle down and cultivate properly, and today was the first time he had used an origin crystal, which gave him a shock. A single star origin crystal required the continuous input of origin power from a martial artist in the spiritual ocean tier for a whole month to be successfully formed. Thus, one could imagine how powerful the origin power inside such an origin crystal was. Yet, Ling Han had just simply absorbed it for a few moments, and the origin crystal was gone. Gone. This spiritual ocean of mine is a bit too big. Furthermore, there are 2 of them. Ling Han sighed. His power far exceeded an ordinary person in the spiritual ocean tier, which also implied that if he wanted to raise his cultivation level, he needed far more spiritual chi than the average person. To gain, one must first sacrifice. However, if I were able to become invincible amongst those of the same tier, even if that means I have to absorb more spiritual chi, that'd be fine. Anyways, origin crystals are easy to get. Ling Han flipped his hand again, and this time, he drew out 100 origin crystals. Pa. They all shattered at the same time, and instantly, origin power gushed forth like an ocean wave, sweeping around him. Chapter 366, Leaving Sea Breeze City. The biggest benefit of cultivating with the use of origin crystals was that there was no time limit. The process in which a martial artist absorbed spiritual chi and transformed it into origin power would require him to expend his spirit to stimulate his spirit base to absorb the spiritual chi. However, if one cultivated with origin crystals, one could skip that step and greatly conserve his spirit. Thus, the cultivation time could at least be extended to twice or thrice the normal time. One could practically cultivate for the whole day then sleep. When one woke up, his spirit would naturally have recovered already, so he could again continue to cultivate. This was also why the disciples of great sects could improve so fast. They not only had a large amount of spiritual medicine to break through the shackles of their cultivation level, they also had endless origin crystals to speed up the accumulation of their origin power. In only half an hour, 100 origin crystals were completely used up. Ling Han hissed. The rate he used origin crystals at was already so fierce now. Then when he reached the flower blossom tier, and the deity transformation tier, wouldn't his body become an endless pit? So how many origin crystals would he need at that time to ensure that the rate of his cultivation would not slow down? Thankfully, I have the Black Tower, which has its own herb garden and is capable of speeding up the growth of spirit grass. Otherwise, how could I manage to earn so many high-grade origin crystals? Single-star origin crystals were practically useless for the spiritual pedestal tier, and when he reached the deity transformation tier, he would need at least 5-star origin crystals to be able to speed up his cultivation rate. In his last life, he had not been as monstrous as he was now. As a result, the alchemical pills he concocted added together with some origin crystals were enough to support his flight-like cultivation rate. But now, he continued to cultivate as one pile of origin crystals after another shattered into pieces. He quickly absorbed the origin power to increase his cultivation level. However, there is no bottleneck to my current cultivation rate. As long as I have an ocean's worth of origin crystals, my cultivation level would still be raised extremely quickly. Ling Han smiled slightly. He estimated that with another 10 days, he'd be able to step into the second layer of spiritual ocean tier. After another few hours, he could hear banging noises, and the whole basement had exploded. This implied that the members of the Duan clan had completed all the things they needed to do to retreat. It's time to leave. Ling Han flashed out of the Black Tower and immediately could feel pressure was buried under debris. He was already prepared for this. The Thunder Battle Armor showed its might and released the terrifying power of thunder. Pa, pa, pa. The bricks all around him were instantly shattered into pieces as he blasted a hole in the rubble. He calmly advanced as the Thunder Battle Armor continuously released bolts of lightning. He very easily walked out of the ruins and arrived on ground level. At this moment, the whole Duan Manor was already a scene of complete disorder. There were huge fires burning, which a considerable number of people outside the manor saw and quickly came to help extinguish the flames. Ling Han used his movement technique and left quickly. In a remote alley, he summoned Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan out of the Black Tower. Then, he released a pillar of water that spewed onto the two of them. The two of them jumped up at the same time and moved into a defensive stance. However, they quickly looked confused in the next instant, because their memories were still stuck on that time when they were under the combined attacks of Duan Zhengji and Nong Qingyu. How did we get here? Hiss. My head is a bit painful. I remember now, you were the one who knocked me out. Yu Kai-yu stared at Ling Han. Ling Han quickly shook his head and said dramatically, your eyes must have blurred, how could it be possible that I would hit you? That's because I used a great various heaven instant movement talisman to bring us out of the Duan Manor. The two of you could not withstand the powerful pressure of instant movement, so you two passed out. This bluff made Guang Yuan and Yu Kai-yu stare blankly. Neither of them had ever used any kind of talisman for teleportation, so naturally they did not know what side effects would result from its use. They might be of the mind to doubt Ling Han's words, yet it seemed like they had no basis for their doubt. We should go back. Ling Han said. Yu Kai-yu said quickly, we should return to the sect first and report the information about the Thousand Corpse sect to the upper ranks. Junior brother Han, we discovered the base that the Thousand Corpse sect have built here, this is a great achievement. I'll ask our Grand Elder to speak a few words of you and your punishment will definitely be cancelled, so you would not need to venture to the Dark Devil Forest anymore. Ling Han merely smiled and said, that's all right. I was planning to go out and travel a bit anyways. You go ahead and return to the sect to make a report, and I will bring them to the Dark Devil Forest for a stroll. He had already found out some information about his mother, and for the moment, it was not possible for him to rescue Yu Hongchang, so it would be better for him to go and find the 2 remaining main ingredients for the medicine for Ling Dongxing. Thus, even if this trip to the Winter Moon sect could not be considered completely satisfactory, he had basically achieved his goal. Yu Kaiyu nodded. The Thousand Corpse sect had appeared in this Sea Breeze city that was practically right under the nose of the Winter Moon sect. This was a huge matter, so it had to be made known to the sect at the very first instant. After he left, Ling Han and Guang Yuan returned to the inn. Guang Yuan looked very awful. His goddess from years ago had been refined into a corpse soldier, and this filled him with bone-deep hatred for Duan Zhengji. If you want vengeance, you must first increase your own power, Ling Han said calmly. With your current ability, there is no way you would be able to get your vengeance. You would only be delivering food to Duan Zhengji. I am not going to help you. This vengeance is up to you to obtain. Guang Yuan curled his hands into fists, and a strong fighting spirit could be seen on his face. Very good. In terms of cultivation resources, I will satisfy you completely, but whether you are able to step over this threshold into the spiritual pedestal tier, whether you would be able to catch up with Duan Zhengzai will still depend on your own effort, Ling Han said calmly. Guang Yuan nodded. He did not want to entrust something like obtaining vengeance for the woman he loved to someone else, either. Previously, I had indeed knocked the 2 of you unconscious, Ling Han said abruptly. I have a spirit tool that is similar to a spatial ring, but it is capable of containing living things. Just now, I drew the 2 of you into it, and that was how we managed to escape from Duan Zhengji. He kept this from Yu Kaiyu because this guy couldn't keep any secrets after he got drunk. How could he possibly tell him? Guang Yuan was astonished. A spirit tool that could contain living creature, she had never even heard of something like that. However, because of the limitations of his cultivation level, he did not know how valuable such a treasure was, so he was only shocked for a short while. I am now going to draw you into it. You may use the origin crystals inside as you like. First, you need to solidify your foundation with the return spirit pill, then break through. Otherwise, in a battle between equals, how could you possibly defeat the combined forces of Duan Zhengji and a corpse soldier? What more when he has an uncommon spirit tool in his possession, Ling Han continued. All right. Guang Yuan nodded. Don't go against it, I'm going to draw you into it now. Ling Han stretched out a hand and laid it on Guang Yuan. With a thought, Guang Yuan had disappeared from where he was standing. Naturally, he had entered into the Black Tower. Ling Han took large strides, and soon returned to the inn. Ling Han. Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan immediately came to receive him, whereas Hunyo directly pounced into his arms. At this moment, Yu Kaiyu was no longer here, so the 2 girls naturally called Ling Han by his real name. Ling Han nodded and said, "Let's go. We should leave." He called over Kenyi and Zhu Wujiu, and after briefly explaining, Ling Han drew all of them into the Black Tower and told them to cultivate within, whereas he left the Sea Breeze city. He hired a carriage and headed towards the Extreme Yang city. The Extreme Yang city could be considered as the center of the North region. It was very prosperous in trade and commerce. The headquarters the Alchemist Society had in the North region was located here as well as the headquarters that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion had in the North region. It possessed all the most bountiful resources of the whole North region. It could be said that all valuable items would first appear in the Extreme Yang city, be gathered, then delivered to every corner of the North region. He should be able to obtain the remaining 2 main medicinal ingredients that he needed to concoct the Restore Spirit pill here. Chapter 367, Duan Zhengji's Pursuit to Kill. The carriage rocked and swayed. The journey to the Extreme Yang city would take close to a month's time, and this was only possible because Ling Han had hired excellent steeds like the crimson-eyed horned beast. It was said that this kind of beast could travel 10,000 miles in a single day. If it had been a carriage pulled by ordinary demonic beasts, then even if the journey took 3 or 4 months, one shouldn't resent the journey for being too long. The carriage was pulled very smoothly. He could indeed feel rocking movement from within the carriage, but it was not very strong. Furthermore, Ling Han spent most of his time in the Black Tower, so there was not much significance whether the carriage jolted or not. Guang Yuan turned his anger into motivation. Added with the fact that he himself had remarkable talent as well as how Ling Han now supplied him with an endless amount of resources for cultivation, it was as if wings had sprouted on his cultivation. He now already had 1 foot in the spiritual pedestal tier. Kenyi had also begun to attempt breaking through to the spiritual ocean tier. Lu Yutong and Zhu Wujiu, meanwhile, had yet to reach the boundary to the next major cultivation tier, and were currently advancing rapidly on the path of the gushing spring tier. In comparison, Li Si-chan's rate of advancement was much slower. However, the majority of her talent lay in alchemy anyways, which made Ling Han very satisfied. He guided her attentively in alchemy, but as for her cultivation, she could just advance her cultivation level with alchemical pill so long as it did not delay her advancements in alchemy. The most shocking one was naturally Hunyo. After she reached the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, she broke through to the spiritual ocean tier without any stagnation at all. Whatever barrier between major cultivation tiers and whatever unstable foundation were no issue for her at all. It was as she was born to be the strongest being, so there was no barrier to the next major cultivation tier for her, and her foundations were strengthened the moment she took the next step, so there was no need for her to go out of her way to do that. Most importantly, no matter what she ate, she was perfectly capable of transforming the food into her own origin power. Thus, she was constantly improving. Ling Han had sparred with Hunyo before. Under ordinary conditions, he was actually not the little girl's equal. He had to use a mystical power like the Eye of Truth to be able to glimpse the little girl's movements, and even then, they still tied. The little girl's speed was really incomparably awesome, making Ling Han unable to display his ability even though he was stronger. A few days later, they had left the jurisdiction of the Winter Moon sect, advancing towards the extreme Yang city. Zilialu, the carriage suddenly halted. Ling Han just happened to be in the carriage, and he only heard the carriage driver shout, "This is a carriage of the Sun business, who dares to rob this carriage? Hung, let the person inside come out." A cold humph was heard. Ling Han's brow wrinkled into a frown. It was Duan Zhengji. He opened the carriage door, and indeed, he saw that Duan Zhengji was currently standing about 10 meters away from the carriage. The latter wore a large felt hat on his head to block the sunlight. After a member of the Thousand Corpse sect cultivated corpse chi, though they did not fear sunlight, they disliked it immensely. This guy actually chased him all the way here? Ling Han leaped down from the carriage and said, "You all leave first and wait for me 10 miles ahead of here. If I am not able to make it there within an hour, then you all no longer need to wait for me." When the carriage driver heard Ling Han say this, he was naturally pleased that he would get to relax. Usually, they would have the responsibility to protect their employer. Duan Zhengji did not stop them either. His target was Ling Han, and as for the 2 carriage drivers, it did not matter to him whether they lived or died. "You are really considerate. You obviously know that there are elites of the Winter Moon sect searching for you, and you still dare to search for me in the city. Moreover, you even successfully found me." Ling Han shook his head, seemingly slightly surprised. Duan Zhengji smirked coldly and said, "If I do not behead you, what face do I have to face Elder Jiu Yun?" Ling Han grinned and said, "Are you really that confident that you can take me down? If you had not had the instant movement talisman, how is it possible that you would be able to escape from me?" Duan Zhengji sneered. "I don't believe you would still have more of such a precious item." Then, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, Ling Han said, smiling, and directly flashed into the Black Tower. Unless he used the one-time installation of power from the Black Tower, with his current cultivation level of the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier, there was no way he would be capable of killing an opponent in the spiritual pedestal tier, mainly because there was too much of a power gap between them. When the power gap was wide to a certain extent, then it would become a dominating factor. As the saying went, enough power would be able to defeat 10,000 techniques. That was something that could not be compensated by any kind of technique. Moreover, he still had to leave Duan Zhengji to Guang Yuan. If such a huge feud was not settled by Guang Yuan's own hand, then Guang Yuan would not be able to rest in peace even after his death. Duan Zhengji was astonished. He had not foreseen that Ling Han would actually still possess another instant movement talisman. One had to understand that this kind of object was really too precious. It was a divine item that could preserve your life. Furthermore, it had disappeared since the ancient times. And Ling Han not only had more than one. This stunned him completely. Now that this brat has been contaminated by the Yin Qi in the giant tomb, he will not be able to hide from my nose within this half-year's time. I will definitely find him again and kill him, he declared inwardly. Ling Han cultivated in the Black Tower for a while, then left in a flash. Hunyo followed him out as well. The little girl was planning to cling onto him again. Ling Han thus held onto her small hand and walked forwards. Indeed, 10 miles ahead, that carriage was waiting for him. When the two carriage drivers saw Ling Han actually appear with a little girl in tow, they could not help but be extremely astonished. Who would experience such a thing, encountering an enemy in the middle of their journey, but eventually when he reappeared, he had a delicate, pretty little girl with him. Ling Han naturally did not pay attention to their confusion, and had no intention to explain either. He and Hunyo both boarded the carriage and continued on their journey. However, after only 1 day had passed, Duan Zhengji had once again caught up to them, and Ling Han used the same trick, which was entering back into the Black Tower. He had originally thought that it was because of the carriage. As a result, this time, he had the carriage return. He'd just have to hire another. However, after only another day, he was once again stopped by Duan Zhengji. He shook off Duan Zhengji for the 3rd time, and even changed his appearance again in the Black Tower. He hired a 3rd carriage, but after only a day, Duan Zhengji still found him for the 4th time. So you are even proficient in changing your appearance. Duan Zhengji sneered. Ling Han rubbed his chin and said, in that case, then you should have some kind of unique trick that allows you to detect me from a very far location, and not because you are especially smart and found me through some clues I left behind. You can slowly make your guesses. Duan Zhengji would naturally not reveal the secret. Who knew how many instant movement talismans Ling Han still had on him? Then, according to our old rules, I should leave, so you need not see me off. Ling Han did not continue to say any more unnecessary words and immediately entered the Black Tower. Duan Zhengji was astonished. How many instant movement talismans did this guy actually have? Why did it seem like they were endless? With a leap, he began to once again search for Ling Han as far as the eye could see. After entering the Black Tower, Ling Han immediately used the power of the Black Tower to scan himself to find out whether someone had planted their martial intent on him or not, which allowed Duan Zhengji to find him successfully. But the result was that he was very normal. He could not help but feel curious. What was going on here then? Guang Yuan is about to break through, and by that time, I'll toss Duan Zhengji over for him to deal with. Ling Han considered the matter for a moment, then came to a decision. He could not bother to leave the Black Tower either, and so he began to cultivate endlessly within the Black Tower. After another 3 days, he broke through to the 2nd layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and heard 2 pieces of good news. Guang Yuan had broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, whereas Kan Yi had broken through to the spiritual ocean tier. Chapter 368, Away. All of them were pleased, and even deliberately organized a celebration for it. Putting aside the breakthrough to the next major cultivation tier, after one had broken through to the spiritual ocean tier, one could possibly need more than a year's time to break through to the next cultivation layer, and all these minor breakthroughs were worth celebrating, so breaking through to the next major cultivation tier was naturally a day of big celebration. Guang Yuan and Ken Yi broke through simultaneously, so this was naturally a double celebration. It also increased the pressure on Lu Yutong and Zhu Wujiu. They were still some distance away from the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, so they had fallen back a bit too much. Yet Ling Han told them to try slowing down their cultivation rate as much as possible. The smartest thing to do was to strengthen their foundations as much as they could. Only Li Si-chan was not the slightest bit anxious. She was an alchemist, so it was all right even if her cultivation rate was a bit slower as long as it did not drag down the advancement of her art of alchemy. In the past, Guang Yuan naturally was the undeniable most powerful one of their group, but after Ling Han had broken through to the spiritual ocean tier, his place as the top spot naturally had to be yielded to the latter. After that, even Hu Niu could easily suppress him with her superior speed. Thankfully, he had now broken through to the spiritual tier and regained his top spot, which allowed him to get back a bit of his pride. He was obviously more pleased as a result. Duan Zhengji is chasing after us? When Guang Yuan heard the news from Ling Han, his eyes instantly became furious and his hands curled tightly into fists. He said, I want to kill him. You have just broken through. In terms of personal ability, you are not his equal, what more when he still has a level 5 spirit tool in his possession. If you seek him now, you would still be going to your death. The only difference is whether you die sooner or later, Ling Han said calmly. Though these words were not pleasant to hear, they were the truth. Guang Yuan calmed down and asked, Young Master Han, what should I do? Firstly, you must place your focus on cultivation. As long as you are able to break through to the flower blossom tier, then what would a level 5 spirit tool count as? Ling Han raised a finger to emphasize his point. Guang Yuan shook his head and said, I am well aware of my own talent. I am inferior to Ken Yi and Miss Yutong. At most, my talent is about the same as Zhu Wujiu. It would be difficult for me to cross the boundary between the mortal and immortal plane. Even if I have a supply of alchemical pills from young Master Han, would still need a minimum of 10 years. 10 years, even though it seemed like a very long time, in truth, it was an overwhelmingly short time for a martial artist to break through to the flower blossom tier. That was because merely passing through all the cultivation layers from the first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier all the way to the 9th would require who knew how long. What more when he still had to break through the boundary between the mortal and immortal plane? That was the real difficulty here. Just take a look at the Winter Moon sect and you'd know. There were numerous people in the spiritual pedestal tier and they had no lack of 6th tier cultivation techniques, yet why were there only so few people in the flower blossom tier? Stepping over this threshold was really too difficult. 10 years would be enough for him to advance from the first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier to the flower blossom tier. If these words were heard by others, they would definitely laugh themselves to death. How could it possibly be so fast? However, these few people in the Black Tower all looked as if this was completely natural. With an earth-grade alchemist to support them and with innumerable spirit grass growing in the Black Tower, there would be no shortage of alchemical pills, so how could it not be an easy thing for cultivation to advance, breaking through to the next major cultivation tier? On the other hand, it was strengthening their foundations that would take more time. After all, they had used alchemical pills to forcibly advance their cultivation. Zhu Wujiu's face twitched, and he said, Big Brother Guang, if you want to be modest, it's up to you. Why must you strike me a blow in passing as well? I don't think I've offended you, have I? The others could not help but laugh. Zhu Wujiu's martial arts talent was bad, he could indeed not compare two geniuses like Lu Yutong and Ken Yi. Ling Han pondered for a moment, then said, "If you really want to get your vengeance immediately, it's not that I don't have a way for you to do that, but this will require you to pay a very heavy price. As long as I can kill Duan Zhengji, I am willing to pay any price," Guang Yuan immediately declared. Ling Han looked at the determined expression on his face and said, "I can concoct the little 3-yang boiling blood pill which will temporarily raise your ability to the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, whereas your battle prowess would be close to one who has half a foot in the flower blossom tier." Guang Yuan was instantly excited and said, "I should have 99% chance to kill Duan Zhengji." Duan Zhengji was only in the 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and even if he had a level 5 spirit tool, it was impossible that he could compare to an opponent who had half a foot in the flower blossom tier. However, after the effects of the medicine have passed, you will drop down a major cultivation tier, which will not recover with time. Ling Han said solemnly. Which means that you will have to start cultivating all over again from the 1st layer of spiritual ocean tier. Lu Yutong and the others' expressions changed slightly. For a martial artist, what was more terrifying than their cultivation falling back? Furthermore, that was a drop by a major cultivation tier. It would be like one was still a noble god today, yet would drop onto ground level the next day. How many people would be able to withstand such a massive change? Yet Guang Yuan did not hesitate in the slightest and said, "Please help me, young Master Han." This life of Guang Yuan will be sold to young Master Han from now onwards. I will definitely recover my cultivation as soon as possible and serve young Master Han. Falling back of cultivation was indeed scary, but if one looked at it from a different aspect, it did not mean that there was nothing to be gained. And that was that one would be able to cultivate all over again and improve those parts that he had overlooked, thus strengthening their foundations and make them even sturdier than before. Furthermore, with the experience of having broken through, there would naturally be no bottleneck in his cultivation as long as there was an adequate supply of cultivation resources. And this happened to be something he needed not worry about. Ling Han nodded and said, "I will begin concocting the boiling blood pill as soon as possible. You study more fully the battle image fists to ensure that it would be a surefire win." "Yes." Guang Yuan nodded. Ling Han did not immediately concoct the pill mainly because he was lacking one main ingredient. Thus, he exited the Black Tower and headed towards the nearest settlement. As he expected, Duan Zhengji caught up with him not too long after. This time, Ling Han did not duck into the Black Tower, but rather used his movement technique to compete with him. Just when the latter was about to catch up with him, Ling Han arrived successfully at the next city. The remaining dregs of the Thousand Corpse sect were akin to gutter rats, so how could he possibly dare to expose his identity in public? As a result, Duan Zhengji only glared fiercely at Ling Han, and it was only after Ling Han's figure disappeared at the city gates that he gave a cold humph and left swiftly. Needless to say, he must have gone somewhere, waiting to ambush Ling Han. This perverted corpse man, if it was not for the fact that I have to leave you to Guang Yuan, I would definitely make you experience some suffering. Ling Han said. He had the demon birth sword, and even if he was not Duan Zhengji's equal, there was no need for him to avoid him like he had all this while. It was only because he wanted to leave Duan Zhengji for Guang Yuan to deal with that he had deliberately pretended weakness. He had a huge shopping spree in the city. That main ingredient lacking for the concoction of the boiling blood pill could not be considered too rare, but it was still a level 5 spirit grass after all, so the price was still extremely shocking. Ling Han had to pay more than 50,000 origin crystals for it. Aside from that, Ling Han had also unrestrainedly bought other spirit grass, all the types the Black Tower did not have. For a large number of them, he directly purchased their seeds, intending to bring them back to be planted. With the cheating tool that was the Black Tower in his possession, ordinary spirit grass needed only grow for a month or so and would be ripe enough to be used in medicine. However, after spending so much money, there was not many origin crystals he had left. There was even barely enough left for cultivation. I have to hurry and get to the extreme Yang city, then concoct some alchemical pills to earn money. Otherwise, putting aside the purchase of the two main ingredients, even the origin crystals I need for cultivation would be gone. Ling Han immediately entered into the Black Tower and began to concoct the little 3-yang boiling blood pill. The boiling blood pill was a class of alchemical pills. There were still two other types called the Great 3-yang and Extreme 3-yang. However, the lowest acceptable cultivation level necessary to take these two pills were the Flower Blossom tier and the Deity Transformation tier, respectively. They could allow one to increase their battle prowess by close to a whole cultivation tier, but it was not possible for them to exceed the major cultivation tier. For example, if one in the 9th layer of the Flower Blossom tier took it, he would only be able to gain ability close to one who had half a foot in the Spiritual Infant tier, so there was not much difference. However, the side effects were the same, and that was directly slicing off his cultivation by a whole major cultivation tier. And if Guang Yuan were to take the Great 3-yang boiling blood pill now, there would only be one result: his body would explode and he would die. It took only about an hour, and Ling Han had concocted 4 little yang boiling blood pills. Chapter 369, Battling Again. All of them were excited. Though none of them had experienced it firsthand, they had heard from Ling Han that he had been pursued by Duan Zhengji all these days. All of them felt ire at that, and now that the boiling blood pill was successfully concocted, they could finally raise the flag for their counterattack. Ling Han exited the city and headed south. However, he had only traveled about 100 miles when Duan Zhengji appeared once again as if he was a tapeworm. "Brat, let's see where you'll run off to this time." Duan Zhengji sneered. Previously, Ling Han did not use the instant movement talisman, but rather chose to take the risk and compete with him in speed to escape into the city. What did that imply? He no longer had any instant movement talismans left, or he only had 1 or 2 left, which he had to save for a time when he needed it to save his life. However, I am quite impressed. You obviously have no more means to preserve your life, yet you still dare to leave the city alone, he continued. He was trying to probe Ling Han's words now. He wanted to know if Ling Han still had any instant movement talismans in his possession. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "Who said that I left the city alone? Oh, could it be that you've hired an elite martial artists?" Duan Zhengji was slightly alarmed. There was indeed no such idiot in this world who obviously knew that he was currently being hunted down by an elite in the spiritual pedestal tier, yet would still deliberately and boldly leave the city to go to his death. However, when he expanded his divine sense, he did not detect that there was anyone lying in ambush in their proximity. In truth, he had followed Ling Han for a long while before he finally appeared in front of him. Firstly, now that they had traveled far enough, it was impossible for Ling Han to escape back into the city, and secondly, he had to confirm that there were no elite martial artist following behind Ling Han to protect him. How was it possible that he would appear if he was not completely sure? Ling Han smiled slightly, and raised his right hand slightly. Hunyo's figure appeared out of nowhere and immediately stretched out her small arms to hug him, looking completely like she was planning to keep clinging to him. Duan Zhengji's mouth instantly opened in a gape, his eyeballs looking like they were about to pop out of his head. How could this be possible? A living person appeared out of thin air? Could it be that this little girl had appeared by using the instant movement talisman? But did this world have this kind of instant movement talisman that would actually allow one to appear in such an exact location? Duan Zhengji suddenly had a sense of foreboding. When one encountered something that he could not logically explain, he would definitely experience a feeling of helplessness. "Nyo, thrash him," Ling Han said with a smile. "N." Hunyo answered decisively. Her tiny figure twisted, and Xiao, like a bolt of lightning, instantly appeared behind Duan Zhengji. She raised her tiny fist, aiming a punch on the back of Duan Zhengji's head. Her speed was really much too fast, so fast that Duan Zhengji did not even have the time to dodge nor parry. All he could do was use origin power to protect his head and circulate his martial intent to form a shield. To clash head-on with an opponent in the spiritual pedestal tier with the ability of the spiritual ocean tier, the only result would be that Hunyo's fist would be completely shattered. But how could Hunyo be so easily dealt with? Her tiny fist changed direction inconceivably and pounded right below. Peng! It hit Duan Zhengji's back directly, and this one punch was enough to make Duan Zhengji stumble so that he almost collapsed onto the ground. Hunyo succeeded in this first attack and immediately displayed her beast-like style of attack. Peng, peng, peng. Her tiny fists waved repetitively, endlessly assaulting Duan Zhengji's weak points. Duan Zhengji was astonished and could only expand his origin power without caring for the price to protect his entire body. It was as if he had become a porcupine, and there was no longer any area left for Hunyo to attack. This finally forced Hunyo to have no choice but to stop. With a xiao, she had leaped back to Ling Han's side and once again clung to him, acting spoiled. The Hunyo now looked harmless, like a delicate, pretty little princess. Who would have thought that her attacks just now had been so wild and incisive? Duan Zhengji suddenly felt a powerful fear, because protecting his whole body with origin power like this was a very huge expense on his reserves, and about an hour at most in this condition would leave him powerless. Hunyo needed only wait until the time when he appeared to be short of origin power to attack, and at that time, he would be. The results would be unthinkable. Thankfully, he still had a secret weapon. Duan Zhengji drew out his imitation demonic noise saber. This was a level 5 spirit tool, and furthermore, it was capable of releasing sound attacks from all directions. Hunyo's cultivation level of the spiritual ocean tier was a solid weakness. With the demonic noise penetrating her brain, her only fate would be being slaughtered by him as he desired. Heng, you two are indeed a bit strange, but in front of absolute power, your only fate would be death, he said coldly. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, haven't you seen how pathetic you looked just now? Ugly guy. Hunyo exclaimed haughtily. How dare you? Duan Zhengji waved the demonic noise saber, and immediately, sound waves spread out to attack Hunyo and Ling Han. Big brother Gong, it's time for you to come out. Ling Han waved his hand, and Guang Yuan's figure appeared instantly. This guy curled his hand into a fist, and Hong, for flashes of fist chi danced, all transforming into the image of 5 silver-colored dragons that charged towards the demonic sound waves. Peng, 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 peng. The 5 dragon images were shattered in the first instant, but the demonic sound wave was not diminished. It continued on its path and left a considerable number of wounds on Guang Yuan's body before finally disappearing. It was worthy of being called the imitation of a level 10 spirit tool. It was far stronger than any other ordinary level 5 spirit tool. Duan Zhengji, meanwhile, looked astonished. He said, you have actually broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier? That's not right, how could you possibly appear here all of a sudden? If one person used an instant movement talisman to appear here, that could still be called a coincidence, but for 2? How could such a thing be possible? Moreover, how could instant movement talismans be wasted like that? He came to a realization abruptly and exclaimed, a spatial spirit tool that can store living beings. You brat, you actually have such an extremely valuable treasure on you. His expression turned heated. This was too shocking, because that was equivalent to having an army of his own wherever he went. Just think, if he went alone and snuck into a major faction, then released a large number of elites from his spatial spirit tool and suddenly mobilized them into a sneak attack. How shocking would be the results of such a battle? Especially for the Thousand Corpse sect. The thing that this party needed the most was a place of concealment where they could secretly develop. If he could obtain such a divine treasure, then who in this world would still be able to find the 1,000 corpse sect? Ha ha ha, even the gods are on my side. He laughed loudly. If he could bring back this kind of divine treasure, then there would no longer be any need to mention his failure of destroying the branch at the Sea Breeze City. He would be rewarded greatly, and it might be even possible that he would be directly promoted to become the vice sect leader. Dream on. Ling Han naturally knew what he was thinking. He shook his head and said, "Big brother Guang, kill him." "All right." Guang Yuan opened his hand and took a crimson-red pill, which, of course, was the boiling blood pill. "Huh, so what if you have broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier? You are only in the first layer, whereas I am in the third, and I also have the demonic noise saber in hand. Killing you would be as easy as killing a chicken." Duan Zhengji said disdainfully. To prevent any accidents from happening by having the battle drag on, he immediately took the initiative to charge over. He raised the saber in a flying slash and the offensive demonic noise surged forth, able to penetrate the brain and shatter the heart. Guang Yuan roared in rage. Hong, a terrifying aura emanated in a wave from his body, and actually formed a hurricane around him. Martial intent was flickering within. Peng, he shot out another punch, and as before, four flashes of fist chi which transformed into 5 dragon images appeared. Yet these 5 dragon images were at least 10 times bigger than the previous 5. Each was about 30 feet tall, and their silver color shone brilliantly. Chapter 370, Killing Duan Zhengji. Peng, 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 peng. The dragon images crushed them, and the demonic noise disappeared completely. Previously, the demonic noise easily shattered the dragon images, and even managed to wound Guang Yuan. Yet the situation was turned around now. The dragon images crushed the demonic noise, and majestically rushed towards Duan Zhengji. Duan Zhengji could not help but pale in shock. How could this be? Guang Yuan's ability actually rose to a point that he could only look up to in a single instant. This was the 7th or the 8th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. How could it be so powerful? The higher one's cultivation level, the more they would feel the gap of 1 or 2 minor cultivation layers. Duan Zhengji was only in the 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and even if he had a level 5 spirit tool, the 7th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier would be sufficient to suppress him. After all, he himself was not some kind of outstanding battle genius, but had depended entirely on his imitation demonic noise saber. You can go to hell and ponder over it. Guang Yuan charged out. He did not have much time, and by the time the effects ended, not only would he have to return to his original cultivation level, he would even have to fall back down to the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Duan Zhengji somehow managed to parry his attack, yet repeatedly threw up blood from Guang Yuan's attacks. In front of absolute power, his counterattack looked so weak. Angji, he suddenly released a strange call, and within a moment, a coffin slid out of the forest, as if it had legs of its own. Peng, a loud thump was heard, and a corpse soldier leaped out of the coffin. It was Nong Qingyu. Qingyu. Guang Yuan could not help but gasp. "Huh, now that you've seen your old lover, you should be very happy, right?" Duan Zhengji sneered. "Could you bear to kill your old lover?" Shua, shua, shua. A corpse soldier had no concept of emotions, and she immediately launched a fiery attack against Guang Yuan. Her skeletal claws waved in a series of attacks, and there was a black-colored corpse chi surging forth. If it came into contact with flesh, especially an open wound, this corpse chi would enter the body. It had to be removed from the body at the very first instant. If not, the corpse chi would invade the body and he, too, would become a corpse soldier. It was extremely terrifying. Guang Yuan could not bear to assault the remains of his old lover. He merely continued to dodge endlessly, yet this gave Duan Zhengji enough opportunity to act wildly. Demonic noise gushed forth in a sound wave, and endless streams of blood splattered from Guang Yuan's body. Ling Han did not say anything. If Guang Yuan could not be decisive and stubbornly chose to do this, that was his matter. He had already created a chance for Guang Yuan to obtain his vengeance, but if the latter was not able to make use of it, then he would not give him any other chance in the future. Ha ha ha, I know that you managed to have such battle prowess because you took an alchemical pill. The problem is how long would the effects of an alchemical pill last? Duan Zhengji smirked. He had now returned to the upper hand in this battle. Guang Yuan did not answer, and only looked dumbly at Nong Qingyu. Though this was a corpse soldier, she was quite well preserved, and looked as if she was merely asleep. Chilla, the clothing on his body was endlessly torn, and multiple wounds appeared. The black-colored corpse chi wove around his wounds, as if venomous snakes trying to enter his body through his wounds. Allow the corpse chi to invade obediently, and I'll be kind enough to refine you into a corpse soldier to allow you and your old lover to be a pair. Duan Zhengji laughed loudly. The match was set. He was destined to rise within the 1,000-corpse sect. Die! Guang Yuan suddenly exploded, and shot out a punch that hit Nong Qingyu's face directly. The terrifying power behind his blow directly shattered the corpse soldier into pieces. How terrifying was the ability of one who had half a foot in the flower blossom tier. Duan Zhengji looked on dumbstruck. He had never thought that Guang Yuan would suddenly show his might. There was a sliver of his divine sense in the corpse soldier, and that was how he could control it according to his will. Now that the corpse soldier had been destroyed, this sliver of his divine sense was also obliterated, which instantly caused a backlash on him. Ah, he screamed, and spat out a mouthful of blood. Guang Yuan, you are too cruel, you actually shattered Qingyu's remains, he hurriedly called out. Guang Yuan was even capable of shattering a corpse soldier, so how could he possibly be able to oppose Guang Yuan? He could only use words to attack him, and try as much as possible to drag the battle on until the effects of the alchemical pill in Guang Yuan's body disappear. You are the one who has defiled Qingyu's remains, I am only letting her rest in peace. Guang Yuan's expression was determined, his eyes sharp. He had already thought things over enough, and would no longer be moved by Duan Zhengji's words. He waved his fist and attacked. One punch after another, they seemed like they would topple the mountains and turn over the seas. How could Duan Zhengji dare to receive these attacks head-on? He hurriedly turned and ran, wanting to flee. He would immediately bring the information that Ling Han had a spirit tool that could contain living creatures back to the sect. Though it would not be as high a credit as him personally getting hold of it, it would still be a great credit. Do you think you can flee? Guang Yuan sneered. Like an arrow, he shot forward and caught up with Duan Zhengji. Pang, he landed a solid punch on Duan Zhengji's back. Ah! Duan Zhengji yelled again. He had already suffered a spiritual backlash in the first place, and now that he was punched, the impact was so powerful that he felt as if his organs were turning around in his body. It was absolute agony for him. This was still because he had cultivated corpse chi, so his body was different from an ordinary person. Otherwise, his torso would definitely be like a water sack that had exploded, with blood gushing endlessly. Guang Yuan pursued him again and launched a series of fiery attacks without any hesitation. Pang, 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 pang. After a successive series of 5 punches, Duan Zhengji had literally been punched to death. Ah, he howled to the skies. Though he had gotten his vengeance, he was still left with innumerable regrets. If he had been slightly more forceful all those years ago and directly brought Nong Qingyu away from this place, would the tragedy of today still happen? Ling Han walked over to Guang Yuan, drew out a wine sack and handed it over. The thing that the latter needed the most at this moment was possibly to get utterly drunk. On this night, Guang Yuan indeed drunk himself stupid, and Ling Han drew him into the Black Tower. He continued to advance and hired another carriage at the next town. This time, no one else appeared to block his way, and the carriage, with him within, traveled slowly towards the extreme Yang city. Not long after Ling Han left, a figure appeared beside Duan Zhengji's body. This was an old man who looked to be in his 70s. His skin was dry, and it was as if it was sticking to his bones, but his eyes were filled with a dignified aura. If a normal person met his eyes, they would most likely shiver in fear from just that one look. Dead? He examined Duan Zhengji's body closely, and murmured, he was literally beaten to death. Looking at the force of the punches, the attacker should be in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, or could even be one who has half a foot in the flower blossom tier. Could it be that the elites of the Winter Moon sect discovered traces of Duan Zhengji, pursued him all the way here, and finally battled here? I can only choose to refine him into a corpse soldier. Taking advantage of the fact that he's just died, perhaps I can draw out some memories from him. The old man picked up Duan Zhengji's body, and his figure actually rose into mid-air. The flower blossom tier. This old man was Elder Jiu Yun of the Thousand Corpse sect. He was at first supposed to go to the Sea Breeze City for an inspection and to issue a new mission, but had never thought that he would receive the news that the secret of the branch had been discovered by the Winter Moon sect and could only retreat before he even arrived. He had yet to meet Duan Zhengji, but was informed that the latter was currently in pursuit of the person who had exposed them. In the end, when he chased him all the way here, the only thing he saw was Duan Zhengji's body. In a mere 5 days, Duan Zhengji's corpse was refined into a corpse soldier. If he had known this when he was still alive, who knew if he would regret joining this sect? They were really deranged. Elder Jiu Yun continued to draw out Duan Zhengji's memories. Though there were only a few shattered pieces, but his final battle was preserved quite fully. A spatial spirit tool that can store living creatures? Ha ha ha, the gods are on the side of our Thousand Corpse sect, we will prosper. We definitely will. A dark expression appeared on his face, and he immediately rose up into the skies. He wanted to find Ling Han and snatch that extremely valuable spirit tool. Chapter 371, Open Shop. After dealing with Duan Zhengji, Ling Han naturally needed not change his appearance anymore. Accompanied by the carriages swaying, he traveled all the way to his destination. When he reached the extreme Yang city, his cultivation had reached the middle period of the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but the bad news was that he had used up all his origin crystals, so the current him was really poor. Guang Yuan's cultivation had also fallen back to the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and after this time period of over a month spent on cultivation, he had just broken through to the 2nd layer, which was not that much different from Kenyi. Even if these two endlessly refined origin crystals without rest or sleep, they would only be able to supply 2 origin crystals in a single month, and they would only be single-star origin crystals. How pitiful! Ling Han sighed. When he entered into the extreme Yang city, he handed over the last origin crystal on him as the registration fee for his entry into the city. The registration needed only be done once, and in future, he would not need to pay any additional fees for any subsequent entries. To save money, he didn't even let Lu Yutong and the others out. Now, the first step was not to find the remaining 2 main ingredients for the Restore Spirit pill, but rather to earn money first. Without money, could it be he was planning to steal? Even if he wanted to, he had to have the ability to do so first. The extreme Yang city was the commercial center of the whole North region. This was an extremely lively place, and there were 2 colossal powers here, the Alchemist Society and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. The headquarters of the Spirit Treasure Pavilion was still called the Spirit Treasure Pavilion, but the place where the Alchemist Society was located was called the Northern Pill Palace Hall. It occupied close to 1/10 of the total area of the whole city. There were numerous martial artists and alchemists residing within. There was also a gigantic medicine farm that provided the ingredients for the daily concoction of the alchemists. It was said that this medicine farm had an extremely large gathering spirit array over it, which allowed the spiritual qi within to be extremely dense and sped up the growth of the spirit grasses. To sustain the circulation of this gathering spirit array, the amount of origin crystals consumed daily was astronomical. It was likely that even the Winter Moon sect would shiver at seeing this sky-high figure. In terms of wealth, there were two great parties who were at the top of the hierarchy in the North region, the Alchemist Society and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Only these two great parties could burn origin crystals like that. When Ling Han heard that, he could not help but feel his hands itch. He wanted very much to enter this medicine field of the Northern Pill Palace Hall and pull out a few stalks of every type of spirit grass to be transplanted into the Black Tower to perfect his medicine field. Only in the Black Tower could it be called a real medicine field. His thoughts wandered too far away. Priority now was to earn money, earn money. Ling Han planned to open up a shop to sell alchemical pills, along with a restaurant, to endlessly gather origin crystals for him. Auctioning off a high-grade alchemical pill would indeed get a high price, but the problem was, the rarer something was, the greater its value. If he drew out too many, their price would naturally drop. Furthermore, the amount of origin crystals Ling Han needed was an astronomical figure. No matter how many, he wouldn't complain about having too many. Thus, he not only needed to occasionally produce some high-grade alchemical pills to earn origin crystals like crazy, he also had to ensure a steady stream of lower-grade alchemical pills to continuously earn origin crystals for him. Everything was difficult at the start and lack of money could encumber even the greatest of heroes. Ling Han did not have even one origin crystal, so he could only start all over again. He first harvested some ginseng from inside the Black Tower, and went to a pharmacy to sell them. But the result was that this pharmacy offered an extremely low price for them. He was so furious that he went to another pharmacy, yet the result was the same. When they saw that he was an outsider and that his cultivation level was only in spiritual ocean tier, they naturally wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to make a killing. In the desolate north, the spiritual ocean tier could be considered to be one of the middle ranks of power, but in the extreme Yang city, only the spiritual pedestal tier could be addressed as elite, whereas those in the flower blossom tier would be able to get real respect. There was nothing to be done. Who asked the extreme Yang city to be the commercial center of the whole North region? There were many elite martial artists of the flower blossom tier, and if one simply looked at this city, they may even think that the flower blossom tier was too easy to break through to. After switching a few pharmacies, the result was more or less the same. Ling Han could only bear the pain and sell the ginseng at a rock-bottom price. One had to understand that these ginsengs have been growing for close to 2 months, and their age was close to reaching 300 years. You all will regret this. Ling Han noted this down. In future, he would definitely open a branch beside every pharmacy, and snatch away all their business. Ling Han sometimes was also very childish. With starting capital, Ling Han immediately opened his pharmacy and a restaurant. It was very easy to do so as he simply bought readily available ones that did not even need to be renovated. As a result, 2 days later, his pharmacy and restaurant were open and ready for business. Lu Yutong was placed in charge of the restaurant, whereas Li Si-chan was responsible for the pharmacy. The restaurant was called Forget Not, which meant that if a person ate once, he would not forget the taste and would come again and again. Meanwhile, the pharmacy was called Alchemist King Pavilion. With Ling Han's skill, this was definitely not an exaggeration, but rather that he did have the ability to deserve this name. Since he wanted to earn money, he naturally had to make his brand known. However, even though they had opened for 2 days, neither of the two shops were doing too well in business. In the restaurant, Ling Han had drawn out some of the vegetables, fruits, and dried meat from within the Black Tower. Anyways, there was a lot available, but these ingredients were only used in some high-end food, and the bill had to be settled in origin crystals for them. But for a shop that had newly opened, only some ordinary people would be coming for the novelty. The foods that these people chose were the most ordinary ones, and their bills were settled with gold and silver. These people could not afford the higher-end food, so how could it be possible that he could earn origin crystals? The pharmacy was in the same situation. Though the name of Alchemist King Pavilion sounded very grand, it was also the stuff of jokes for the majority. Moreover, no one would dare to take alchemical pills randomly before there was a very good reputation for the establishment, who would come to purchase alchemical pills. It was not possible even if the price was cheaper than average. Furthermore, Ling Han did not want to snatch a niche in the market by waging a price competition. How could the alchemical pills concocted by the alchemist emperor be sold for a low price? Could it be that he could only choose to reveal his status as an earth-grade alchemist? Ling Han shook his head. The claws of the Thousand Corpse sect had already extended to the desolate north and the Winter Moon sect, so there was no guarantee that there were no spies or a branch of the Thousand Corpse sect here. Ling Han ruined the plan that the Thousand Corpse sect had put into place for many years at the Falling Moon Gorge. If he revealed his status, it would be very easy for them to find him. If he revealed his status and if the Thousand Corpse sect had spies here, they would definitely come and make trouble for him. Killing him should be impossible, but they could disturb his business, and this was also something that he did not want to see happen. He changed his strategy, and had the restaurant bring out delicacies that were only available for a short period of time, and these foods were all made from the vegetables grown inside the Black Tower. They were free to sample. After only 2 days, the business of the restaurant suddenly exploded to shocking levels. As word of mouth spread, more and more people came, and there was no lack of extremely powerful martial artists among them. Furthermore, as long as they had tasted that precious food, it was naturally impossible for them to forget about it. Thus, they would willingly draw out great amounts of origin crystals to spend on the food. These delicacies were very expensive. One vegetable dish would require 1 origin crystal, and the meat dishes were even more expensive as they required 10 origin crystals. And Ling Han had yet to bring out the demonic beast meat that he was rearing inside the Black Tower, and the price for dishes made from this could be increased by another 10-fold. However, demonic beasts were very rare, so Ling Han planned to leave their meat only for his own people, and had no plans to bring it out to be sold. Now that the business of the restaurant had improved, Ling Han guided this stream of customers to the pharmacy. In this way, the business of the pharmacy improved as well. Furthermore, the alchemical pills in the pharmacy were largely concocted by Li Si-chan, but those alchemical pills with the highest value originated from Ling Han's hand. Once they used these pills, everyone praised their effectiveness. In just over 10 days, the 2 establishments had begun continuously earning origin crystals for Ling Han. The amount was extremely impressive. However, astronomical wealth always attracted covetous eyes. Ling Han had no backer and had just come to this city yet earned so much money. How could it be that he would not attract the envy of others? A young man came to the restaurant, and demanded half their profits. Chapter 372, An Exorbitant Demand. Call your boss out, the young man commanded in a very haughty tone. There were 2 attendants behind him, and both in the spiritual ocean tier. In the extreme Yang city, though the spiritual ocean tier could not be considered as top-tier elites, they were not such commonplace thugs that a wave of a hand could gather a whole bunch of them either. Thus, this young man should have quite a high social status, and was definitely no ordinary commoner. The waiter hurriedly went to ask for the manager. The manager stepped out to talk with the young man, but was also waved off by the latter. He insisted that they find someone who could really make decisions in this place to talk to him. As a result, Lu Yutong appeared to meet him. When the young man saw Lu Yutong, his eyes lit up unconsciously. There were indeed many beautiful women in this world, but there were not many that were beautiful to the extent Lu Yutong was. Furthermore, such an extraordinary beauty was even in the higher ranks of the gushing spring tier. She was rare goods. I go by the surname Lang, and my name is Jun Kai. The young man withdrew his arrogant attitude and put on a refined and courteous manner. What guidance would Mr. Lang like to offer? Lu Yutong asked tonelessly. Lang Jun Kai smiled slightly and asked, "How may I address you, miss?" This person had extremely thick skin, and was not someone that could be easily dealt with. Lu Yutong thought for a moment, then replied, "Lu." Lang Jun Kai was rebuffed neither gently nor roughly, yet did not get angry. He offered an open-mouthed smile. With teeth as white as snow, together with a handsome face, he looked very dashing. He said, "Miss Lu, I would like to make a business deal with you." "What kind of business deal?" "I would like to have 50% of the profits of Forget Not." Lang Jun Kai made an exorbitant demand. Lu Yutong laughed in spite of herself and asked, "Is Mr. Lang joking?" Lang Jun Kai shook his head and smiled gracefully. "Don't think that I am greedy. In truth, I originally wanted to ask for 70% of the profits, but for the sake of Miss Lu, I decided to cut down to 50%. He immediately folded his arms over his chest and continued, "Please listen to what I can do for you first, Miss Lu. The Extreme Yang City is a huge cake that contains an astonishing amount of profits in it. However, this cake has already long been divided and distributed, and with Miss Lu's forceful interference and getting a slice of your own now, this will make a considerable number of people displeased. Among these people, there are some that possess incredible power. Even with just a flick of a finger, they could make this restaurant suddenly collapse tomorrow. So, Miss Lu needs me. At the very least, I have some face in this Extreme Yang City. Thus, once you hang up the sign of the Lang clan, I believe that there would be no one in the Extreme Yang City who would dare touch a chair or table here. Half the profits versus losing everything. For such a simple choice, Miss Lu should be clear on what to do, right?" When he was finished speaking, Lang Jun Kai looked smilingly at Lu Yutong. Today, he only asked for 50% of the profits, but tomorrow, he would make this beauty into a captive beneath him, and by then, naturally, all the profits would belong to him. Lu Yutong's expression changed slightly. She came from a great clan, so she naturally knew that with the prosperous business Forget Not was making now, it would definitely attract covetous eyes. However, she had never thought that his day would come so fast. Since Ling Han had handed the restaurant for her to manage, unless it was a last resort, she did not want to disturb Ling Han. As a result, she asked, "Mr. Lang, could it be that laws do not exist in the Extreme Yang City?" "They do. However, the law would only protect a limited number of people, such as my Lang clan. For now, at least, Miss Lu is not under the protection of the law. Only when you enter the camp of my Lang clan will you get similar protection," Lang Jun Kai said with a smile, admiring Lu Yutong's delicate features. He was definitely going to get hold of this beauty. Lu Yutong suppressed the anger she was feeling, and stated calmly, "I'm afraid Mr. Lang is being too overconfident." "Oh, you don't believe me?" Lang Jun Kai asked, smiling. He did not think that a few words would be able to conquer Lu Yutong. "You can make your own investigation and find out what my Lang clan represents in this Extreme Yang City. Additionally, from tomorrow onwards, it would be best for the restaurant to close temporarily. Whenever you agree to my conditions, you can come find me at Listen to the Rain Pavilion. I am there most of the time." He stood and said, "I'll beg my leave then. I won't bother to see you out," Lu Yutong said coolly. The moment Lang Jun Kai left, Lu Yutong immediately went to make inquiries about the Lang clan. The result made her frown. The Lang clan was a party at the level of the spiritual pedestal tier. Though it was not one of the top clans in the Extreme Yang City, they possessed their own space in the society. More importantly, the Lang clan was a vassal clan of an Earth-grade alchemist in the North Pill Pavilion 1, and that was the real source of confidence for Lang Jun Kai to make such a ridiculous demand. Could it be that Ling Han had to use the name of an Earth-grade alchemist to suppress Lang Jun Kai? That would really be like using an ox cleaver to kill a chicken. That would really lower his status. But who asked Ling Han to currently have too few people he could actually use effectively by his side? At first, Guang Yuan had already broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, but his cultivation level had fallen dramatically now. If one was considering the strongest in their group, that would actually be Ling Han, an Earth-grade alchemist, and the next strongest was a little girl of 5 or 6, Hunyo. Lu Yutong sighed. The main thing was that Ling Han's alchemy had improved too quickly, and the power of those by his side could not catch up at all. Otherwise, an Earth-grade alchemist would at least have a large number of spiritual pedestal tier elites following by his side, and it would not be strange for even a few flower blossom tier elites to appear at his side. She pondered the issue for a while, but still decided to inform Ling Han of this matter, because she was not able to settle this issue at all. Oh, a fly? Ling Han's mouth twitched. He said, "It's all right. I will go and sit at the restaurant personally tomorrow. I'd like to see how arrogant he can be." Lu Yutong nodded. At worst, Ling Han could just reveal his identity as an Earth-grade alchemist, and at that time, there would be no worries that Lang Jun Kai would not kneel in front of Ling Han and beg for his forgiveness with fear and trepidation. The night passed. Early the next morning, Ling Han brought with him Guang Yuan, Ken Yi, and Zhu Wujiu to the restaurant. As for Hunyo, there was of course no way he could leave her behind. At the beginning, everything was normal. However, when it was about noon and time for lunch, a few groups of black-clad people came to the restaurant. They did not order any dishes, but simply sat down at various tables. These black-clad people were not ordinary customers. Most of them were in the Gushing Spring tier, and there were a small number in the Spiritual Ocean tier. It would not attract anyone's attention if there was only 1 or 2 of them, but with such numbers, the moment ordinary customers entered, they would turn around and leave. These people's auras were too overbearing. Even the waiters did not dare step up to urge them to make their orders or leave. All the way until noon, there was not even a bit of business in the restaurant left. These people must have been sent by Lang Jun Kai to make trouble. Lu Yutong said furiously. Ling Han smiled and said, "Firstly, they are here to ruin our business, and secondly, they are here to show off their might. To be able to mobilize so many Spiritual Ocean tier and Gushing Spring tier elites, ho, this Lang Jun Kai is indeed a scheming character. What do we do? Do we have Hunyo go and chase them off?" Lu Yutong asked. Hunyo instantly grinned. Violence was her favorite activity, but Ling Han usually did not allow her to get into fights. Ling Han smiled and said, "Diplomacy before violence. We are doing business here, so we should be amiable, which would attract riches." As he spoke, he descended down the stairs from the 2nd floor. Lu Yutong could not help but roll her eyes. Being amiable to attract riches? From the killing intent all over Ling Han's face, he looked more like he was about to go on a killing spree. Chapter 373, Total Knockout. Ling Han walked downstairs slowly. As his eyes swept over the whole area of black-clad people, he smiled and said, "It is now time for lunch. Everyone, you all can either begin to make your orders, or leave and get lost. Don't affect my business." "Fuck, can't I study the menu for a while longer and think about what I want to eat?" one of them immediately shouted, slamming a hand onto the table. "That's right. What kind of damn restaurant is this that won't even allow its customers to look at the menu, and force them to order? Is this what it means when they saw a big shop will bully its customers?" someone sneered. "We are not people who can easily be trifled with, so I'd really like to see how they want to bully us. Waiter, come here and tell us what's on the menu. You've got to be clear, and don't stutter." A waiter came forward, trembling. He was only a waiter and received a small salary, so he really did not want to get involved. But having a gushing spring tier elite pointing at his nose, how could he, an ordinary man, dare not go over? He began to recite the dishes on the menu. Louder, did you fuck asterisk not eat, that black-clad man immediately yelled. The waiter could only raise his volume, and began to recite the menu in a louder voice. Asterisk 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 asterisk, how dare you actually spit in my face? The black-clad man glared fiercely, and delivered a harsh slap directly to the waiter's face. The force of the blow caused the waiter to spit out 3 of his teeth. The waiter was slapped dizzy. 3 other waiters hurriedly took a few steps forward and supported him. They all looked at that black-clad man with angry expressions, but did not dare to voice out their resentment. How could he bully them like that? What is it, you still dare to glare at me? The black-clad man glared back at them, his ferocious nature on full display. He. The other black-clad people broke out into laughter. In their eyes, this was only a farce. Ling Han strode over, a carefree smile still on his face, and arrived in front of that black-clad man. You're the manager? Then you come and recite the menu to me. The black-clad man turned his fierce eyes onto Ling Han. The command they had received was to threaten the people of this restaurant as much as possible. Recite your sister. Ling Han moved and grabbed his head, which he then slammed onto the table. With a bang, the pearwood table was instantly broken into pieces. That black-clad man fell down onto the ground, groaning as he held his head in pain. Even if he was in the gushing spring tier, it was not pleasant when Ling Han slammed his head onto the table like that. It felt as if his head was exploding in agony. Schwa, at least 90% of the black-clad people stood, and the only people seated were 7 black-clad people who were in the spiritual ocean tier. They were still calmly and coolly seated, as if nothing had happened at all. You fuck asterisk actually dare to commit a crime. Those black-clad people all glared fiercely at Ling Han. This is considered a crime? Hey. You all really have too little experience. Ling Han shook his head. With a stomp of his foot, the head of the black-clad man who was still lying on the ground was stepped into the floorboards. He maintained a kneeling stance, his backside raised high, as if he was waiting for someone to pamper him. Chong. Those black-clad people all drew out their respective weapons, all of them wearing expressions of rage. Hunyo immediately bared her teeth at the people around them. The little girl was the really violent one, her large eyes were filled with killing intent. In her mind, there was completely no laws, no logic, and no rules. Whoever treated her and Ling Han well she would only consider as non-enemy, but whoever treated them badly was her enemy. A wild beast's attitude towards enemy would be to slaughter them. Subdue him, take off all his clothes and hang him at the door to allow everyone to admire the view, a black-clad man called out. This idea's not too bad. But we have to give him a thrashing first for daring to hurt one of us. Let's go. Immediately, 8 people came forward, brandishing their weapons to attack. When Hunyo saw this, she instantly leaped down from Ling Han and attacked. Pang. The weapons flashed, and those 8 people were instantly all knocked over, lying on the ground and moaning in pain. This naturally was because Hunyo had been merciful. Ling Han had shook his head at her, not allowing her to kill anyone. Though the little girl was very unhappy at this, she would still not defy Ling Han's order. When they saw that Hunyo was actually so powerful, the 7 people in the spiritual ocean tier could no longer sit by calmly, and they all stood up as well. This was just a newly opened restaurant and the owner was a newcomer. He had just come to the city, so what kind of background, or power, could he possibly have? As a result, now that the 7 of them in the spiritual ocean tier moved, it should be a cinch for them, but they could not see through the oddness of Hunyo. I'll go. One of the black-clad men at the spiritual ocean tier acted, stretching out a hand to grab Hunyo. Invincible little tiger fists. Hunyo somersaulted in midair, and with speed as fast as if she was a flash of light, arrived behind that black-clad man. She punched with her tiny fist, and pang, the force of the blow instantly caused the man to stumble and spit out a mouthful of blood. Ling Han could not help but smile. Did Hunyo now had an additional attribute of making others laugh? Let's all attack. The remaining 6 people in the spiritual ocean tier were greatly shocked and hurriedly advanced all at once. Ganging up on someone, anyone with a little bit of status or pride would definitely feel that it was beneath their dignity to do something like that, what more when the opponent was only a little girl. However, these 6 people were mere servants, so how could they possibly have the bearing of elite martial artists? If one was not enough, then of course all of them should attack at once. As for whatever pride, could it fill their stomachs? Hunyo was calm and unafraid. Her tiny figure dashed left and right, and here and there. Even Ling Han could not capture her movements at that kind of speed if he did not activate the Eye of Truth, what more for these 6 people. Within a few moments, all 6 of them had been completely knocked over. Yay! Hunyo skipped around happily, "I'm so awesome," written all over her face. The other black-clothed people all hissed. Oh no, they were finished. They'd kicked an iron plate. Before this, they had all thought that this restaurant was opened by a little martial artist in the Gushing Spring tier. At most, there would be 1 or 2 spiritual ocean tier elites on standby here. 7 of them came in one go, so they should have been sufficient to quash any opposition. Indeed, only 2 people in the spiritual ocean tier came from the other side, but they were all too powerful, weren't they? They managed to thrash 7 great elites like them as if they were mere stray dogs. What the fuck? Flee quickly, report to young Master Lang. Someone immediately thought of fleeing immediately, yet saw that Ling Han was currently looking at them smilingly. I told you all to leave just now, but you refused. Now, it's too late for you to leave. Ling Han moved and slapped them unconscious one by one. Soon enough, all of them lay on the ground, unmoving. Those waiters all watched on, dumbstruck, thinking, so the boss was actually so mighty. As long as news of this battle spread, no one would dare come to make trouble again in future. But they were still a bit worried. The extreme Yang city was a place filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Even spiritual ocean tier martial artists could only be considered minor characters here. Young Master Han, what do we do with them? Zhu Wuxia asked. Tie them all up and hang them at the door, Ling Han answered calmly. Doing that would affect our business, Zhu Wuxia said with a bit of hesitation. Ordinary people would definitely want to avoid trouble, and when they saw that kind of scene, who would dare to still enter? It's fine. Just let them see our power, Ling Han said. As an Earth-grade alchemist, did he need to be afraid of them? He smiled slightly at that waiter who had been slapped and said, You go and collect 10 silver coins from the counter. Your salary is doubled from now on. Thank you, sir. The waiter was instantly elated. If 3 of his teeth could get so many benefits in exchange, it was worth it. Chapter 374, Gong Letian. A total of 40+ black-clad people had come this time. They were strung up in bunches of 10, and hung from the top of the restaurant's 3rd floor as if they were grasshoppers. There were a total of 5 bunches in all, which made for a rather spectacular sight. Many people had gathered outside the restaurant, pointing at them. Some of them were there to watch the show and some to laugh at them, but anyway, those black-clad men naturally became a laughingstock. However, though there were many there watching the excitement, not one of them entered the restaurant for a meal, because they had all recognized the identities of these black-clad men. They were from the Lang clan, a party on the level of the spiritual pedestal tier. How could they easily let this matter go? Thus, someone would definitely come from the Lang clan later, and if they entered the restaurant to eat, they would naturally be dragged into the trouble as well. Even if they skipped a meal, they wouldn't starve to death, would they? But only moments later, a young man in embroidered robes was seen striding over. When he saw the human kebabs hanging from an upper floor of the restaurant, he could not help but laugh loudly. He walked into the restaurant and laughed. Interesting, truly interesting. Customer, how many are in your group? A waiter immediately stepped forward to receive him. Just me alone. The young man found an empty table and sat down, seemingly very casual. There was a kind of soaring confidence in his manner. Obviously, he either came from a powerful clan, or he himself was strong enough to be that confident. I heard that the 8 treasures here are very famous. Bring out one of each for me, he said. All right. The waiter immediately turned around and went into the kitchen. Soon, the dishes were served. The young man only took one bite and his eyes widened, a disbelieving expression on his face. Too delicious, it was too delicious, wasn't it? Amazing. Amazing. Amazing, he praised. To be honest, the culinary skill is just average, but the ingredients themselves are too fresh and delicious. One single bite would make one unable to stop eating. It's incomparably magnificent. Hungry. Hunyo tugged on the corner of Ling Han's shirt. She didn't feel anything earlier on, but when she saw someone eating and drinking in front of her, she could not bear it any longer. Ling Han nodded, and had the kitchen prepare lunch for them as well. He, Hunyo, Lu Yutong, Zhu Wujiu, Ken Yi, and Guang Yuan all sat at one table. When the excellent dishes were served, they, too, began eating immediately. The food they ate was naturally not something the food sold to customers could compare with. Their food not only contained demonic beast meat, there were even various valuable medicinal herbs included, and it was prepared into medicinal food for them. These medicinal herbs had grown inside the Black Tower for at least about a month of 2, and were at least 100 years old. What kind of concept was that? It could be said that only Ling Han, in his last life, had that kind of tremendous wealth that allowed him to squander so lavishly in this way. However, he was only in the spiritual ocean tier now, and was also in the North region, an area that could be considered relatively poorer than the others. Even a party like the Winter Moon sect could not do something like that. In front of delicious food, all of them began to fight over the grub without care for their personal image. Of course, none of them could overcome Hunyo. This little girl was a born foodie. They were just eating in high spirits when they saw that young man in embroidered robes approach their table and say with a salivating expression, "Can I sit down and eat with you? I won't eat for free, I'll pay for this meal of yours." Ling Han smiled and said, "Those 8 dishes are not enough for you?" The young man in embroidered robes rubbed his nose and said, "They're indeed not enough. Moreover, the food on your table looks even more delicious." His eyes lit up as he spoke, saliva practically dripping from his mouth. True, with different ingredients, the aroma that wafted out was also different. Just take a look at how all those waiters were swallowing as if their lives depended on it. Ling Han looked at the young man in embroidered robes, and thought him to be an interesting-looking fellow. Thus, he said with a smile, "If you still have the appetite, please sit." The young man in embroidered robes was greatly delighted and hurriedly sat. He drew out a pair of chopsticks and immediately began eating. He had already seen how things were like at this table. If he wanted to eat, he would have to fight over the food. No one would act reserved with him. Wonderful. Too wonderful. He took a bite of meat and his face instantly bloomed with pleasure. This is the meat of the level 2 demonic beast, confused fragrance deer, isn't it? No, that's not right. I've also eaten a considerable number of dishes with the meat of the confused fragrance deer inside, but their taste was definitely not as delicious as this. Moreover, there is also a great number of precious herbs inside. One bite is enough to make all the pores on my body open wide and bring a slight increase to my cultivation. He could not help but complain as he said, "Waiter, with such good stuff, why didn't you serve it to me? Is it because you think that I can't pay out the origin crystals for them?" Ling Han laughed and said, "These dishes are not offered to customers." The eyes of the young man in the embroidered robes lit up. He asked, "You're the boss of this restaurant?" "That's right." Ling Han nodded. "How about if you supply this kind of ingredients to me every day?" "You can ask for any price," the young man in embroidered robes offered quickly. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I've already said that these dishes are not offered to customers. They are only reserved for my own people." The eyes of the young man in embroidered robes flashed, and he said, "My name is Gong Letian. How do I address you, brother?" If these words were heard by those people in the young man's circle, they would definitely exclaim in disbelief. That was because this guy came from a shocking background and had always maintained a prideful demeanor. Even in the extreme Yang city, there were not many people that he took seriously. Yet now, he actually would so cordially and warmly address someone as brother. It was really inconceivable. But that also showed that this guy was really a foodie. Ling Han smiled calmly and answered, "Ling Han. Brother Ling, from this day onwards, you are my brother." Gong Letian said cordially. "And since we're brothers, then these ingredients," he stared at Ling Han anxiously, looking like a little puppy. Hung. A cold humph was heard, and a young man was seen walking in. He had an ugly, dark expression on his face. "What insolence, to actually treat my subordinates like this." It was Lang Jun Kai. Lu Yutong instantly stood up and said, "This place does not welcome you, get lost." What a joke, in the extreme Yang city, who would be qualified to tell me to get lost? Lang Jun Kai sneered, an indignant expression on his face. It should have been a cinch, yet they actually encountered a setback. He had been teasing a new girl at the Listen to the Rain pavilion as per usual when he suddenly heard his servant report that the people that he had sent out that morning had all been taken down and were currently hung up as a public spectacle. This matter drove him to fury, and he did not care even if he hadn't yet devoured that attractive little star. He immediately rushed over here. "Che, Lang Jun Kai, when have you become so high and mighty?" Gong Letian said suddenly. Moments ago, he still had the look of a pitiful puppy, but with a turn of the head, he assumed an austere, prideful bearing. "I'm not qualified to tell you to get lost, either." "Gong, young Master Gong." Lang Jun Kai was immediately stifled, and a fearful expression appeared on his face. The Lang clan could be considered as a respected clan in the extreme Yang city, but the real source of their confidence came from that earth-grade alchemist they depended on. However, the Gong clan itself was a clan of alchemists. All 3 generations, aside from Gong Letian, were alchemists. Furthermore, Gong Hekan of the older generation was a low-level earth-grade alchemist. Compared to the Gong clan, the Lang clan naturally paled greatly in comparison. There was no way to compare the two at all. The competition criteria for profligate young masters like them was of course their background. Even if Lang Jun Kai and Gong Letian were similarly in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, Lang Jun Kai did not have the slightest confidence in front of Gong Letian. "Don't affect my dining mood, get lost." Gong Letian showed his forceful nature. Chapter 375, Thick-Skinned. An expression of humiliation and fury appeared instantly on Lang Jun Kai's face. He was a respected young master, but someone actually pointed a finger at his nose and demanded him to get lost. How could he possibly bear with that? But still, could he beat Gong Letian? "Young Master Gong, this matter has nothing to do with you. Please do not interfere, on account of young Master Lu." He decided that he still had to persist for a moment longer. The young Master Lu he was talking about was the grandson of that alchemist that the Lang clan depended on. He, too, was the descendant of a low-level earth-grade alchemist, and had equal standing with Gong Letian. The Lang clan was a vassal clan of the Lu clan, and he, Lang Junkai, was naturally the lackey of the young master of the Lu clan. Even if Lu Qiyuan was standing in front of me, I would tell him to get lost too, so who do you think you are? Gong Letian said disdainfully, then waved his hand again and said, if you still don't get lost, you may not be able to leave so easily later on. Lang Junkai was defiant, his fists gripped tightly, but ultimately, he still decided to give in and said, fine, I'll leave. Please let those people hanging outside go. Gong Letian could not help but turn to look at Ling Han, and did not make the decision without his input. Ling Han could not help but smile. Although Gong Letian was also a profligate young master, he knew the ways of the world. Otherwise, he would not have needed to ask for Ling Han's input, but simply issue the command. He smiled slightly and said, if you want to take them away, you can. 100 origin crystals each. You. Lang Junkai was outraged. 100 origin crystals for each, why don't you go and commit a burglary then? You can pay if you want to. Ling Han paid no more attention to him, and continued his meal. He. Gong Letian could not help but laugh. When his eyes swept over Ling Han, he finally began to take the latter seriously. The kind of person he hated the most was one without any backbone. There were too many people by his side who liked to flatter him and curry his favor. As such, he was naturally very admiring of Ling Han's character. A vein popped on Lang Junkai's forehead. He had sent out 40-odd people this time, and if he were to pay the ransom for every single one of them, that would come up to a total of over 4,000 origin crystals. It wasn't that he could not afford it, but this would make his heart ache. It's too much, he said, shaking his head. Is it? Ling Han began counting on his fingers. One person can produce 10+ origin crystals a year, so about 10 years would be enough. Lang Junkai almost leaped up in his outrage. There were only 7 people in the spiritual ocean tier here, how could the others, who were in the gushing spring tier, produce origin crystals? Don't bargain with me. If you want to take them, leave the origin crystals behind. If not, get lost. Ling Han gave a flick of his hand. Lang Junkai's eyes were spitting fire, but he only thought that Ling Han had gotten Gong Letian's support and that was the reason for his absolute courage now, and the tragic thing was that he indeed did not dare trifle with Gong Letian. His face turned green, then pale, then back again multiple times. Lang Junkai finally waved his hand and scattered a large number of origin crystals on the table. He then exclaimed, release them immediately. Untie them yourself, Ling Han said. Lang Junkai almost exploded from his fury. He glared venomously at Ling Han for a while before finally turning around and leaving to let those underlings of his down. He swore to himself that this matter would not end so easily. He indeed could not beat Gong Letian, but there was still young Master Lu. Ha ha ha. Gong Letian laughed loudly, raised his cup towards Ling Han, and said with a smile, Brother Ling, I'll offer you a toast. I definitely want to befriend a friend like you. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I will have to give the matter some consideration. Gong Letian pretended to be displeased, delivered a friendly punch to Ling Han's chest, and said, You're really not fun. These ingredients? After so much talk, his nature as a born foodie began to flame up again. Hunyo instantly became stingy. She stretched out her 2 slender arms to protect the table, and exclaimed, All Nyos. All of them laughed. When the human kebabs had been let down, other customers soon continuously streamed into the restaurant. However, every single dish of the 8 treasures needed 1 origin crystal. All of them were here for that, but the majority would only order 1 and eat to their heart's content. After all, there were not many people as obnoxiously wealthy as Gong Letian. Even so, the restaurant still earned a considerable profit. The daily income of the restaurant was about 500 to 600 origin crystals. Otherwise, it would not have attracted the covetous eyes of Lang Jun Kai. As a foodie, Gong Letian was very stubborn. He kept pestering Ling Han and wanted him to agree to deliver the ingredients at any cost. However, there were indeed not many demonic beasts inside the Black Tower. Ling Han was not the type that would soften just because someone begged him, and so naturally just ignored him. As a result, Gong Letian would come practically every day and continuously launch a verbal barrage on Ling Han's ears. Additionally, he would, without any reservations at all, join them for meals. His skin was really thick enough to make one shiver. Come, come, come. I'll bring you out today to increase your knowledge. On the fourth day, it seemed that Gong Letian finally realized he had a conscience, and actually came over before mealtime. He grabbed Ling Han and left. Knowledge about what? Ling Han asked, smiling. You'll know when we get there, Gong Letian said mysteriously. The extreme Yang city was a very big place, and they would of course not use any kind of movement technique within the city. Thus, after about an hour, they finally arrived at a small lake. The leaves of the willow trees on the banks hung over the lake, and there were gazebos, platforms, towers, and pavilions, casting beautiful reflections on the water. The scenery here was extremely beautiful. Gong Letian brought Ling Han to a courtyard by the lake. There were two old servants standing guard at the door. When they saw Gong Letian approach, they immediately lowered in a bow and said, "Young Master Gong has arrived." Gong Letian nodded, and asked, "Has the feast begun?" "We're still waiting for a few important guests, so it has not begun yet," one of the old servants answered. "Great." Gong Letian let out a breath of relief, and with a wave of his hand, signaled Ling Han to follow him before he entered into the courtyard. The courtyard was very big. Upon entry, there was a huge garden, the lake on the left side. The water glistened, making for a beautiful scene. On the grass by the lake, there were already multiple banquet tables arranged. At this time, quite a number of people were already seated. "What gathering is this?" Ling Han asked. "There are a considerable number of people from the North region's Prodigy role here today. Firstly, to gain some knowledge, and secondly, some have come back from the deep mountains and great streams, bringing with them spiritual herbs or ancient relics that have a high commercial value," Gong Letian said. Ling Han nodded. Then this kind of gathering was really worth coming to. Perhaps he could even find out some news about the remaining two main medicinal ingredients. He asked, "What is the North region's Prodigy role?" You don't even know about that?" Gong Letian looked utterly surprised. "What kind of secluded, remote corner did you actually come from?" The North region's Prodigy role records all the young elites of the North region under 30 years old. A total of 100 people can be recorded on the roll. Ling Han gave an "oh," and said, "This is really the first time I've heard of it." "Tell me about it then, what geniuses are on the roll?" "Noah, take this." Gong Letian turned his hand over, and out of nowhere, a book appeared. Spatial Ring. The extreme Yang city was the extreme Yang city indeed. Even a profligate young master like this was qualified to wear a spatial ring. Ling Han took the book from him and glanced at it. The words, "North region's Prodigy role," were writ on the cover. The whole book was designed very finely. The brim was inlaid with gold, and the letters were stamped with gold. It was designed to look as luxurious as possible. He flipped it open and looked at it. The words, "Edited by Spirit Treasures Pavilion," were written on the first page. Right, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion really had a hand in a lot of things. "This book is worth 1 origin crystal," Gong Letian said from the side. "How black-hearted." Chapter 376, North Region's Prodigy Role. Reverie _ The things Forget Not sold were certainly expensive, but at least they were genuine. After these booklets were compiled, it could easily be copied, so how could it still sell for so much? Ling Han flipped through it casually. The book was about 100 pages, but only 100 people could make the North Region's Prodigy roll. Was it necessary to introduce them with such a thick booklet? He flipped to the second page, and saw something written on top, Yu Kuan-sang, male. Current age 29 years old, 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier from the Great Sorrow sect, ranked number 1 on the Prodigy roll 2 years ago, battle prowess estimated to be at 17 stars, current number 1 of the North Region's Prodigy roll. Not bad, a 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier at 29 years old. At least, in Ling Han's former life, that was considered a genius amongst geniuses. However, martial arts in his previous lifetime were far from enjoying the prosperity that they did know. At least they couldn't be compared to his current lifetime. Thus, strong young cultivators that appeared in this lifetime were nothing special as the environment was different. Ling Han continued reading. Some of his great deeds were written since the Prodigy battle, such as when he defeated or killed a certain somebody. The information was very detailed, and the final aggregation obtained an estimate of 17 stars battle prowess, reaching the number 1 on the Prodigy roll. It was no wonder this book could sell for 1 origin crystal. The information was certainly quite detailed, revealing most of Yu Kuan-sang's trump cards. It included what spirit tool he used, what abilities he had, what techniques he was skilled in, and even what layer he reached. When was this book compiled? Ling Han asked Gong Letian. It's published at the beginning of every year. It's definitely the one with the most demand in North Region's martial arts circle, Gong Letian immediately said. 1 origin crystal really isn't expensive. This is published in limited numbers, and if you don't have sufficient status, people won't even pay attention to you if even you had a handful of origin crystal. Ling Han nodded. No wonder he had never heard of such a thing in the Rain country. Prodigy battles occur once every 3 years. This is the most direct ranking battle. Afterwards, it will be slightly adjusted according to the battle records of those who make the ranks. However, after 30 years of age, one can't make it into the roll anymore, Gong Letian said with some anticipation. When it's the end of the year, 27 people will go off the roll. I'm not sure if I can squeeze in, even if it's the last place. Ha ha ha. A mocking laugh resounded. A purple-clothed youngster walked over, wearing a smile of disdain. Gong Letian, what sort of pipe dream are you having? You want to squeeze into the Prodigy roll with your abilities? Then, can't pigs be called experts? Ling Han didn't recognize this person, but he recognized Lang Jun Kai, who followed behind the purple-clothed youngster with a sinister expression. Obviously, this purple-clothed youngster was most likely the Lu family's great young master, Lu Qiyuan. Otherwise, those with a normal status didn't have the right to provoke Gong Letian. As expected, Gong Letian immediately jumped up and shouted, Lu Qiyuan, you want to fight? Lu Qiyuan snorted and said, this young master won't stoop to using violence on you. I'll say it now, have the person beside you obediently kowtow in apology, and this young master won't harbor grievances, or else, hem. What are you snorting so mysteriously for? You think this young master is afraid of you? Gong Letian was immediately pissed off. This is my brother, and if you dare touch a single hair on him, this young master will tear down your listen to the Rain Pavilion. Lu Qiyuan's gaze showed coldness as he said, then just wait and see. No one can slap one of my people and still live perfectly fine. Ling Han swept a glance over and said, are you threatening me? Huh, threatening you? Are you fit to be? Lu Qi said in disdain. As he saw it, only Gong Letian had the right to threaten him and look him straight in the eye. As for Ling Han, he could kill him by just extending a finger. Ha ha ha, the atmosphere seems to be a bit intense. Another youngster alked over, and said while laughing, give me some face and stop fighting, all right? In deference for Master Rong, of course. Lu Qiyuan laughed and gave Ling Han and Gong Letian a vicious gaze before turning to walk over to the banquet by the river. Lang Junkai was only just in a lion's hide, giving Ling Han a glare before following to leave. After the youngster surnamed Rong mediated, he smiled at Gong Letian and turned to leave as well. He's called Rong Gao Min, currently ranked 94th on the Prodigy roll. Gong Letian said full of admiration. 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier can rank 94th, I guess it's not hard to make it onto the roll, Ling Han said, smiling. Gong Letian instantly rolled his eyes, snatched the booklet from Ling Han's hands, flipped to a page at the very end, and pointed as he said, "See for yourself just how strong he is." Ling Han swept a glance. It wrote, Rong Gao Min, male, current age 25 years old, 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, from the extreme Yang sect, Rong family, ranked 97th on the Prodigy roll 2 years ago, battle prowess estimated to be 16 stars, currently ranked 94th on North Region's Prodigy roll. Oh, 2 years had passed, so he'd improved. Next, Luo Lai's battle achievements in the 2 years were listed, proving that he was qualified to sit on the 94th seat. Surprising, right? Battle prowess of 16 stars. He can suppress people with thin arms and legs like us with one finger. Gong Letian said full of admiration just how many youngsters yearned and pursued being listed on North Region's Prodigy roll. Unfortunately, only 100 people could make it into the ranks every 3 years. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "You are you, I am I, don't mix us together." This was the honest truth, he really didn't care about 16 stars battle prowess. Gong Letian rolled his eyes at him and pulled him over to the banquet seats. The table was small, and only 4 people could be seated by it. It was mostly 2 to 3 people per table, and very rarely were all 4 seats occupied. Ling Han continued to flip through North Region's Prodigy roll. He wanted to see a few of the prodigies he'd heard about. Lu Yang, Zhu Xuan Er, Zui Yuda, and so on. He rummaged through, and found Lu Yang's name on the 12th page. Lu Yang, male, current age 24 years old, 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, from the Beast Emperor sect, ranked 17th on the Prodigy roll 2 years ago, battle prowess is estimated to be 12 stars, but on top of his beast pet, Frost-Clouded Leopard, his aggregated battle prowess reaches 13 stars. Currently ranks 9th on the North Region's Prodigy roll. Ling Han was a bit shocked. Yukuan Luan who was first was already in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, but the tier of the 9th place dropped to 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Another look at the last place, only the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. In other words, the higher the ranking, the greater the difference in strength was, and the lower the ranking, the closer the ranked one's strength. However, at the year-end Prodigy battle, Yukuan Luan and the top 8 would be unable to attend due to their age, so the tier of the new first place would drop by a lot. Only 4 months' time, no matter how freakish Lu Yang was, he wouldn't be able to charge into 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, he was still young after all. Ling Han turned a few more pages and saw Zhu Xuan Er's name. This name was actually much more resounding compared to Lu Yang and Zui Yuda, because the person was a girl that even Gong Letian would talk about again and again from time to time. Chapter 377, Counting Prodigies. Reverie _ Zhu Xuan Er, female, current age 21 years old, 2nd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, from the Half Moon sect, ranked 76th in the Prodigy battle 2 years ago, but broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier 1 year later. This year she even advanced into the 2nd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. It can be imagined that her ability will advance further in next year's Prodigy gathering, reaching the 3rd or even the 4th layer. Estimated battle prowess is 12 stars, currently ranks 13th on North Region's Prodigy roll. Ling Han paused and nodded. Zhu Xuan Er was proved worthy of being called a genius. This cultivation progress was somewhat surprising. In other words, she broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier at 20 years old, and after she entered the spiritual pedestal tier, she could increase 2 layers in a year. It was considerably surprising. He continued turning the pages. Zhu De ranked 19th, while Limitless Sex triplets were 67th, 68th, and 69th, but the evaluation said that because the 3 were one, if they joined hands, their battle prowess could reach the 33rd place. 2 of the 7 sons of Ao family also made it into the ranks. It was Ao Xinglai who ranked 70th and Ao Wu Wei who ranked 89th. Calculating based on this ranking, he could probably only place 40th or so. However, there were still 4 months before the end of the year, and with Ling Han's progress, he could at least reach the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. His rank would naturally far exceed the 40s. Besides, this was the most normal speed, and if he could receive extra natural treasures, then it was hard to tell as 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier or even the spiritual pedestal tier itself weren't out of consideration. Whatever, should I even get in on the action on such a thing like playing house? It's not like there's any benefit. Ling Han shook his head. With his identity as a former heaven tier warrior, competing against a few small youngsters was embarrassing to begin with. Not to mention that there wasn't much time, and he might not even attain number 1. That would be truly embarrassing. Today, quite a few beauties from the extreme Yang city came. Gong Letian looked to the left and right. Look, that's Jiang Yuxian, Jiang family's eldest daughter. There is also Di Ting Lan, Di family's 3rd daughter over there. Ah, Gongsun family's 7th daughter is here too, Gongsun Lan Hui beautiful and pure like an orchid. Ling Han looked following his finger, and as expected, Di Ting Lan, Jiang Yuxian, and Gongsun Lan Hui were all extremely beautiful, not losing at all to even Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan. Stunning beauty, outstanding martial arts talent, and noble birth made these 3 girls resplendent stars that many pursued. It could be seen that many young men were circling around the 3 girls, hoping to attract their attention. Sadly, their standards are too high, or else this young master could introduce you to them. Gong Letian nudged at Ling Han's waist. Ling Han laughed briefly and said, I politely decline. True, your Lu Yutong is also a great beauty, not losing to any of them, Gong Letian said. Ling Han only laughed, thinking Gong Letian hadn't seen a true beauty. In his former lifetime, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was called the world's number 1 beauty, far from what Lu Yutong and Jiang Yuxian could compare to. Unfortunately, she was a bit barbaric, but otherwise, he really could take her as a wife. Ling Han hurriedly shook off the chills. He actually thought of taking a barbaric woman like Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden as a wife. Did he get some screw loose? Zhong Ziwei is here, someone suddenly shouted, which immediately made more than half of the people stand up. Ling Han immediately flipped through his memories. This was the 54th rank on the North Region's Prodigy roll. His battle prowess reached 18 stars, and he could fight surpassing 9 stars. This was extremely shocking. On the entire Prodigy roll, there was only one person who could battle surpassing 10 stars, Zhu Xuan Er. The rest of the Prodigies could only surpass 9 stars. However, surpassing 9 stars at the spiritual pedestal tier and surpassing 9 stars at the spiritual ocean tier were completely different concepts. The higher the tier, the harder it was to fight surpassing one's own tier. Zhong Ziwei could surpass 9 stars, but once he broke to the spiritual pedestal tier, he might drop to 8 stars, or even 7 stars. Those like Sword Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden who could still fight surpassing 10 stars were truly the geniuses amongst geniuses, the most exceptional freaks. From this point, Zhu Xuan Er certainly had amazing talent. No wonder she was sought after by sects in the middle state. It's Zhong Ziwei. Gong Letian immediately revealed an excited expression. 54th on the Prodigy roll, and the most impressive thing about him is that he doesn't come from a large sect but from a small family, yet he was able to squeeze into the Prodigy roll with his own efforts. He's my idol. In a short while, everyone crowded around a slender youngster. Even the three beauties revolved around him, each one blossoming with a beautiful smile, displaying their stunning looks without restraint. Zheng Ziwei ranked 54th on North Region's Prodigy roll and could be said to be one of the brightest stars in the North Region. As long as he didn't die, he would definitely become an important person in the North Region. People would definitely pay close attention to such a person, competing to be on friendly terms with him. I'm truly envious. Gong Letian looked with a burning gaze. He really wanted to become a person that received the attention of millions. Although he was a wealthy second generation with countless people that bootlicked him, that was all because of the family behind him and not because of he himself. As a youngster full of pride, he thirsted for respect attained by his own abilities. Lu Qiyuan went to greet Zheng Ziwei as well, raising a glass to Zheng Ziwei. Considering Lu Qiyuan's background, Zheng Ziwei was rather modest. The two were having a great conversation, but it was too far and Ling Han couldn't hear what they were saying. The banquet continued, many people on the Prodigy roll arriving one after another. Since once in 3 years Prodigy battle was starting in a little more than 4 months and the location was just happened to be the extreme Yang city, many people already came over. Even several experts on the roll came, but none were ranked higher than Zheng Ziwei, so there wasn't such a large commotion on their arrival as previously. Coming so early was firstly to avoid delays on the way and missing out on the grand gathering, and secondly to trade with large amounts of young experts gathered together. They could exchange spirit medicine, treasures, and whatnot, some of which might be of great use. Today's banquet stemmed from this purpose. After the few high-ranked experts spoke of their recent adventures, the treasure exchange segment was carried out. Everyone stood up, introducing their treasure and the type of treasure they needed to exchange for to everyone else. It was sort of like an auction, with all sorts of things like arts, techniques, medicinal pills, and some things that had unclear origins, ancient things found in historic ruins, some of which were even older than the time of Ling Han's previous life. Some treasures were substantially precious. Zheng Ziwei took out a stalk of 600-year-old gold silk 1000 spark fruit, a 4th-tier spirit fruit that could increase spiritual ocean tier cultivation by a great fold. Since Zheng Ziwei had already reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, he only needed to solidify his cultivation at the moment and did not need to increase his cultivation or use the fruit. However, there were too many people who hadn't reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, so it triggered an intense competition over it. Chapter 378, Exchanging Spirit Fruits. Reverie _ Ling Han was also very interested. He was now at the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, far from the peak stage spiritual ocean tier, so, gold silk 1000 spark fruit was especially suited for him, enough to increase him by 2 tiers. So at the end of the year, he would be at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and possibly even the spiritual pedestal tier. After all, once his cultivation of spirit power sufficed, the large tier barrier practically didn't even exist. However, Ling Han wasn't interested in contention of ranks amongst the younger generation as he was way past the age of having the desire to prevail over others. Unless there were treasures that could interest him, of course. However, as a person with a high sense of self-respect, he still hoped to become the strongest. Even if he differed several ages from those in the top ranks on the Prodigy roll, he had strong roots that allowed him to be compared with them, so he wouldn't want to lose either. Everyone took out things they thought were precious for the exchange, but Zheng Ziwei kept shaking his head in refusal as none met his expectations. Ling Han stood up and said, "Brother Zheng, I have a bottle of medicinal pills, not sure if you'd be interested?" "Brother Zheng?" Everyone looked at Ling Han in unison, revealing an expression of ridicule. What a joke, a mere nobody at the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier dared to call an expert on the Prodigy rank a brother, how truly defiant. Did a prodigy like Zheng Ziwei not have the ability to break into the spiritual pedestal tier? No, he didn't break through not because he couldn't, but because he wanted to compact his cultivation in the spiritual ocean tier till it was extremely solidified in order to charge into higher tiers in the future. Amongst the young prodigies nowadays, which one of them didn't have grand ambitions? Martial arts were in a prosperous age, and elites emerged one after another from various paths, breaking the lowest age of breakthrough of a certain tier as the amount of top elites grew more and more. Which youngster didn't want to squeeze into the pinnacle of martial arts, guiding people and their paths? Several bottles of medicinal pills? Would Zhong Ziwei lack medicinal pills? What sort of medicinal pill could someone at the fourth layer of the spiritual ocean tier offer? It was said that forces in the middle state offered him an olive branch. Although they might not be a super large force like Heaven Sword Sect, it was definitely astounding. Hey, don't you speak carelessly. Gong Letian hurriedly pulled on the corner of Ling Han's clothes, feeling that everyone's disdainful gazes were brought over to him. It was truly an undeserved misfortune. Ling Han only smiled at him, and didn't explain. Zhong Ziwei didn't show ridicule on his face, but said indifferently, "This little brother, what sort of medicinal pill are you using to trade?" Ling Han took out a bottle of Restore Origin pill and tossed it over. After Zhong Ziwei caught it and opened the bottle stopper, as the medicinal smell drifted outwards, his indifferent expression vanished all of a sudden. He cried out, "Restore Origin pill." What, Restore Origin pill? People cried out one after another, their gazes instantly burning with desire. For normal people, the Restore Origin pill was not only not a spirit medicine, but also a hindrance. This couldn't improve one's cultivation, and contrarily, it could lower one's cultivation. Restore Origin pill's purpose was to hammer at the foundation, making it extremely solid. Undoubtedly, it would shorten original foundation, and more effort was needed to repair it to the original state. With regards to normal people, they didn't need to compact their foundation, only rapidly advancing in tier. However, for prodigies, they strived for perfection, endeavoring to cultivate every tier to perfection. They could be unmatched in the same tier and have the ability to soar into the highest tiers, but once they reached a certain height with an unstable foundation, the tall building would immediately tilt and collapse. There were so many of those at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, so why were there only a few dozen that could squeeze into the prodigy role? It was precisely because their tiers were solidified to an astounding degree, granting them battle prowess far surpassing their own tier. Someone in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier didn't need to care much about planting a firm foundation, so they could only battle surpassing 2 stars. At the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, prodigies started to compact their foundations in preparation for the future, so while their tier remained unchanged, their stars of battle prowess skyrocketed. It wouldn't be strange for them to battle surpassing 3 stars or even 4 stars. Thus, there were so many of those at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier on the prodigy roll, and their battle prowess was varied greatly. Zhong Ziwei had reached peak stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier half a year ago and had been suppressing his cultivation since then to compact his foundation, striving to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier at a state of perfection. With this one move, he could possess prowess surpassing 2 stars and even 3 stars. If he had Restore Origin pill in 4 months' time, which was enough to compact his tier to perfection, then with his talent, breaking through to the spiritual pedestal tier was no problem at all. He already had the ability to break through and had just been suppressing it all along. When the time came, he would soar into the sky, squeezing into top 30 and even top 20. He hurriedly took a closer look, and when he saw that there were actually 20 Restore Origin pills, he was instantly elated. Even the hand he held the bottle with somewhat trembled. It wasn't like he had never seen or eaten a Restore Origin pill, so he immediately discovered that they were genuine and very high in quality, but just how high, he could not be certain as he wasn't an alchemy master. "I'll trade." Zhong Ziwei made a prompt decision. A prodigy like him definitely had the inherent quality of being decisive. An irresolute and hesitant person couldn't possibly come this far. Ling Han smiled with raised eyebrows. He knew that a prodigy like Zhong Ziwei most valued medicinal pills like the Restore Origin pill. Sadly, yellow dragon fruits were hard to find, and the stock he had at hand was almost all used up. Fortunately, after receiving this gold silk thousand spark fruit, he didn't have other great aspirations at the spiritual ocean tier. After he reached the spiritual pedestal tier, Restore Origin pill couldn't possibly be exchanged for the treasures of the world that he needed, so it didn't affect him much. Zhong Ziwei tossed over the gold silk thousand spark fruit, which Ling Han stored in the Black Tower. The two were all smiles as if nothing had happened, showing their extremely strong self-control. If it were normal people, they'd definitely leave in a hurry once they received a treasure. Fairy Zhu is here. Fairy Zhu is here. It was only a small commotion at the start, but it immediately stirred up everyone present. Even Gong Letian stood up abruptly and said, "Where's Fairy Zhu? Where's Fairy Zhu? Fair Zhu? Was that Zhu Xuan Er?" Ling Han was somewhat surprised. Was this girl's charm really that great? He saw that even Zhong Ziwei completely lost self-control. His expression was filled with craze, without a shred of appearance an expert and no different from other people. To be able to make Zhong Ziwei, who had such strong self-control, sink so deeply, it could be imagined just how great Zhu Xuan Er's charm was. At this moment, even Ling Han was somewhat curious in what way was this Zhu Xuan Er so beautiful that she could charm everyone in the north and even interest the prodigy of the Heaven Sword sect in the middle state. The entire place was in uproar as everyone gushed out to greet Fairy Zhu. After 10 whole minutes, a white-clothed girl walked from within the crowd. A white gauze covered her face and her appearance couldn't be seen at all, but her graceful bearing made people refreshed. Chapter 379, Zhu Xuan Er. Reverie _ This white-clothed girl was like a celestial fairy. Each step showed her grace and beauty. She was dignified, calm, and virtuous, but her physique was truly alluring in her legs slender and long, enough to reach the waist of someone of the same height. The longer a female's legs, the more alluring the physique. The ratio of her body was absolutely perfect, such that simply her walking stimulated endless daydreaming. She had a slim and willowy waist, yet her buttocks jutted out, revealing an amazing curve and emitting a luscious bearing. Her breasts weren't extremely large, but could fill an entire hand, and her pink neck was like jade, elegant like a swan's. Her dark hair was like waterfall, tied up by a white silk ribbon. She had no adornments on her entire body, yet it made people feel that this was the most perfect decision, since no matter what adornments were worn on her body, it would only make her appear tacky. Ling Han was astonished. As expected, this girl didn't need to reveal her looks at all to make people feel that she was like a fairy from the heavens, the most beautiful in all of time. The only other woman that ever made him feel this way was Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. However, he had seen Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's appearance, and it certainly fitted her perfect physique. From appearance alone, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was definitely the most beautiful woman in the world, so beautiful that it felt like she shouldn't have appeared in the mortal world. But, AI. Ling Han sighed. That woman had to be so rude, coming over from time to time and taking random things. Reasoning with her would result in her threatening gaze, and his 4 disciples were beaten up terribly one after another. Speaking of reverence, Ling Han could pat his chest and say that his 4 disciples were definitely more obedient toward Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden than him. He, you say no, but your eyes are pretty honest. Now you know that Fairy Zhu is unmatched in her generation, right? Gong Letian's voice sounded beside Ling Han's ear and awakened him from his reminiscence. Ling Han simply smiled and didn't try to explain. He still thought that if his abilities surpassed Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's, then marrying a wife like her wouldn't be too bad, it'd be pleasant to the eyes. However, strength was a necessary safeguard, or else she'd suppress him, and maybe at night, he'd be the one lying on the bottom. Once Zhu Xuan Er arrived, she immediately became the center of attention. It was like she was born a goddess and everyone else would pale before her. Her graceful bearing was too alluring, such that others couldn't even be envious. No matter male or female, they all looked at her with a fanatical gaze as if they would all be willing to plunge into raging fire and boiling water after one word of command from her. Ling Han was shocked on the inside. They were too fanatical who would definitely not do such a thing. Xuan Er is very happy to be able to see all of you young prodigies. A toast to everyone. Zhu Xuan Er held up her wine bowl. Instantly, people revealed expressions of being overwhelmed by flattery and honor, hurriedly holding up their wine bowls as well. As Zhu Xuan Er lifted up the edge of her white gauze, revealing a snow-white chin and dark red lips, people were as if they'd been drugged, some spurted blood from their nose, and some even fainted from excitement. Everyone drank the wine with one gulp. Having received a toast from Zhu Xuan Er, they felt that this life was completely worth it even if they died. Ling Han was felt a slight undulation within. Although he hadn't seen Zhu Xuan Er's complete appearance, just from looking at her chin and her small lips, a beautiful image could be outlined inside people's minds from those exceedingly beautiful proportions. It was just a tip of the iceberg, yet Ling Han was certain that Zhu Xuan Er's beauty was far beyond Lu Yutong and the other girls, even qualifying to compare against Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. However, it was impossible to sway Ling Han. It couldn't be helped. He saw Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden almost every day. She did things that made him very gloomy, so he couldn't like her even if he wanted to. With such a preventive measure, so what if Zhu Xuan Er was the second Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden? After Zhu Xuan Er proposed a toast, she lowered the white gauze, instantly making everyone feel an intense reluctance. They felt depressed, as if they'd been gouged and had lost the thing they loved the most. She opened her mouth and said, Xuan Er wants to buy a medicinal ingredient. If no one has it, then news on the medicinal ingredient will do as well. Xuan Er will repay you greatly. Fairy Zhu, speak as you will. Yes, to be able to serve Fairy Zhu, that's our honor. Through raging fire and boiling waters, 10,000 deaths won't stop us. Everyone shouted one after another, even a few girls looked fanatical. There was no emotion on Zhu Xuan Er's delicate face. She said, the ingredient Xuan Er wants is a 7th-tier medicinal grass called Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass. Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass? What's that? Never heard of it. Many people immediately shook their heads, but Ling Han was momentarily startled, because Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass was one of the 2 main ingredients he needed. He never would have thought he'd come into conflict with Zhu Xuan Er. If the two were to compete, it could be imagined that countless of people would definitely resent him. Whatever, so what if she was exceptionally beautiful, she couldn't even compare to a single hair on this master. Fairy Zhu, I know where the Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass is. A youngster stood up very excitedly. Without pressing, the youngster spilled it all out. 3 months ago, when I just left the Dark Demon Forest, I soon heard someone speak of the Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass, which should be in the depths of the forest. Hiss! Everyone gasped in astonishment. The Dark Demon Forest was one of the more notorious vicious places with flower blossom tier beasts in its depths. Normally, no one dared to enter the depths. Fairy Zhu, the Dark Demon Forest is too dangerous, it would bet better to go in 2 years. Nonsense, Fairy Zhu needs Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass to save someone, can she wait for 2 years? So you want Fairy Zhu to risk entering the Dark Demon Forest? She'll lose her life. Indeed, in 2 more years, maybe Fairy Zhu can advance into the Flower Blossom tier, she won't have to be afraid by then. Ling Han was moved. The Dark Demon Forest actually had the Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass. He was ordered to harvest 7 stalks of the fiery sun grass and had no intention of doing so, but by the looks of it now, it seemed like fate was driving him there, mysterious and inexorable. Looks like he'd have to go to the dark demon forest. Zhu Xuan Er was somewhat worried at first that it would bring trouble when the person spoke openly about the location of the crimson-red chilling ice grass. Thinking again, how many people dared to enter the dark demon forest anyways? She thanked that person and promised that if they'd encountered a trouble, they'd be very welcome to go to the half-moon sect to find her. Since she was in a rush to find the crimson-red chilling ice grass, she soon said goodbye and left. Once she left, the atmosphere instantly dropped drastically, and people no longer had the mood to stay. Not to mention, quite a few people already traded for the treasure they desired. Soon, they started bidding farewell one after another. Ling Han was very satisfied with this trip. He not only obtained gold silk thousand spark fruit, but also obtained news on crimson red chilling ice grass. He returned to refine gold silk thousand spark fruit. Chapter 380, Bone-Forming Pill. Reverie _ It was inappropriate to always live at an inn. Since Ling Han had opened 2 stores in Jiyang City to seize endless streams of origin crystals, Ling Han had already set out to purchase a house. However, in the short amount of time, he hadn't found a suitable one. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were very picky with the quality of the residence, but if it were up to Ling Han, as long as the place was clean, wasn't living anywhere all the same? So, they still stayed temporarily at the inn. After returning to the inn, Ling Han immediately flashed into the Black Tower. Improving cultivation obviously came first. He took in the gold silk thousand spark fruit and burst 100 pieces of origin crystal in passing. Wang, instantly, inexhaustible origin power wrapped around him and continuous streams of power poured into his body, as if kneading. Hong, the spirit fruit's medicinal effect was exhibited. Ling Han used his body as a furnace to fuse the medicinal effects, and cooperating with the power origin crystals provided, his cultivation immediately began to skyrocket. 2 spiritual oceans, one yin and one yang, spinning in opposite directions, began to expand under the stacked effects of medicinal and origin power. It would be fast if placed on anyone else, but Ling Han's spiritual oceans were far larger than that of normal spiritual ocean tier warriors, so it appeared extremely slow. Ling Han estimated that this fruit could at most increase his cultivation by 1 small tier, and this was due to the large amount of origin power that he could expend. Otherwise, if it aided him in advancing half a small tier, that would already be considered good. Why were his spiritual oceans overly large and he even had 2, one yin and one yang? 2 spiritual oceans kept moving against each other like a millstone, constantly polishing his origin power. The result of this was the complete removal of flaws in his origin power, making it more concentrated. People usually started solidifying their cultivation after they reached the peak stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but Ling Han carried it out constantly, so his tier was extremely stable. However, this meant that his advancement was very slow. Even if he was slow, he was still faster than normal people by 10 times. After all, he was the Grandmaster of Alchemy and didn't lack origin crystals. After a day and a night, Ling Han completely refined and absorbed the medicinal power of the spirit fruit, and his cultivation reached the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, 1 step closer to the 9th layer. He circled around inside the Black Tower and pulled out several stalks of spirit grass, deciding to refine a few high-tier medicinal pills for auction. The profits from the tavern and the medicine store were small but steady, but if he really wanted to get rich overnight, then he could only refine high-tier medicinal pills for auction. However, Spirit Treasure's pavilion didn't hold auctions every day, so Ling Han only decided to refine pills a few days after he'd arrived. Spirit Treasure's pavilion's next large-scale auction was in 10 days. Ling Han refined a low-level earth-grade medicinal pill, Bone-Forming Pill. This medicinal pill was for the flower blossom tier cultivators. After one took the bone-forming pill, one's bones would be reconstructed, advancing towards a tougher state. This was very practical, because when two Flower Blossom tier warriors attacked each other, even if one did not lose out on origin power, their bones could break due to lack of durability. When one's bones were shattered, it affected one's strength, so how embarrassing would that be? So the tougher one refined one's physique, then the higher one could reach in the future. This was the same thing as compacting one's cultivation, but from a different approach. Only those in the Flower Blossom tier could take bone-forming pill because they surpassed the mortal level and blossomed a heavenly flower on their spiritual pedestal, giving them an endless stream of vitality. For anyone else, it would be courting death. Ling Han smiled satisfyingly. For this bone-forming pill, he didn't plan on accepting 1-star origin crystals, but 2 stars or 3-star. She would soon advance into the spiritual pedestal tier and the effect of 1-star origin crystals would drop substantially. The profits from the tavern and the medicine store were enough to provide Lu Yutong and the others with resources to cultivate. Ling Han headed to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. After he took out bone-forming pill, it immediately stirred the higher-ups of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Such a medicinal pill was too high in grade, and for caution's sake, they especially invited a Earth-grade alchemy master for appraisal. Coincidentally, the alchemist was surnamed Lu, and named Ji Tonghe just so happened to be Lu Qi Yuan's grandfather. This Earth-grade alchemist was already 70 years old, and his cultivation was still at the spiritual pedestal tier, unable to surpass the mortal limit. Otherwise, for a 300-year lifespan, 70 years old was the prime of one's life. There was still hope. He was an Earth-grade alchemist after all. The resources in his grasp were extremely shocking, and perhaps he could refine some sort of spirit pill that would support him in charging into the Flower Blossom tier. Seeing the bone-forming pill, the old man was very shocked. This was a low-level Earth-grade medicinal pill which was something he could refine, but after opening the pill bottle, the old man was suddenly startled, revealing an extremely excited look and staying silent for a long while. Master Lu, a person from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, called out lightly. Lu Ji Tong was finally woken up and said, "The quality of this bottle of bone-forming pill is too high, making this old man involuntarily sucked into a reverie." "How high?" the person from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion asked. Since bone-forming pill was too important, the one put in charge was a Flower Blossom tier elite. However, in front of an Earth-grade alchemist, he appeared quite modest. This Flower Blossom tier elite was called Li Fei Chen. 13 stars, even 14 stars in quality. Lu Ji Tong pondered, making an evaluation. Li Fei Chen instantly gasped in astonishment. His eyes burned with desire. He was a Flower Blossom tier warrior, so he obviously needed bone-forming pills. The quality of 13 stars or even 14 stars gave him an urge to seize it. "Young man, this medicinal is refined by an elder from your sect?" Lu Ji Tong looked at Ling Han. He definitely had to get acquainted with the alchemist who made it. In corroborating with each other, he might be able to improve upon his techniques. If it were him, the refined bone-forming pill would be at most 6 stars in quality. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "If I said I was the one who refined it, would you guys believe it?" Ha ha ha. Lu Ji Tong and Li Fei Chen laughed at the same time. This was a colossal joke. A 17-year-old, a low-level Earth-grade medicinal pill, and 13 stars in quality were things that couldn't be placed together. Ling Han laughed as well, and then took out a golden badge along with the identification crystal. Upon activating it, information on his identity was displayed. Lu Ji Tong and Li Fei Chen's laughter stopped abruptly. "You're that Ling Han?" Lu Ji Tong cried out. Several months ago, when Ling Han was authenticated as an Earth-grade alchemist, the news spread to North Pill Pavilion. There was only one word in their minds: impossible. A 17-year-old youngster actually refined an Earth-grade medicinal pill? What a bad joke. However, there were 3 Earth-grade alchemists who jointly guaranteed, and so they could only believe it even if there were still suspicions. They never would have thought that the youngest Earth-grade alchemist in history would actually appear. Ling Han nodded and said, "I'm that Ling Han." Lu Ji Tong had no more doubts. There were only so many Earth-grade alchemists in the North region, he could count these people with his fingers alone. And to refine a 13 stars bone-forming pill, only a high-level Earth-grade alchemist could do it. These people were even rarer, countable with a single palm, and each one of them was worshipped in the North Pill Pavilion as they were diligently attempting to reach the heaven grade. Who would be so bored as to refine bone-forming pill? Moreover, these 3 bone-forming pills were very fresh, still carrying the smell like they were fresh out of the furnace. Evidently, it couldn't be a work of a high-level Earth-grade alchemy master in their early years. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.